Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
American Comics. After losing Betty, the Monster Hulk finally broken. Part 2. The sunlight of Malibu Beach pierced through the haze left by last night's storm. A black bulletproof Maybach pulled up smoothly in front of the private villa of the Stark Industries CEO. Inside the car, the air conditioning was running, yet it couldn't suppress the trembling, scorching heat. Lin Nuo leaned back against the leather seat, his long legs crossed. He turned his head, his deep black gaze falling on Potts, who was adjusting her appearance beside him. Potts was wearing a pure white haute couture professional suit today. The outfit fit her curves perfectly, outlining her well-toned, graceful waist flawlessly. Only an Hermes silk scarf was tied tightly around her neck, hiding the mark he had bitten into her last night. Lin Nuo's tone was calm as he stretched out his long arm, his large palm gripping Potts's slender waist and pulling her toward him with a slight tug. "Do you really have to go?" Caught off guard, Potts went limp, her shoulder pressing directly against the man's broad, firm chest. She gasped, her nose filled with the aggressive, woody cologne scent on Lin Nuo. Potts pressed her hands against his shirt fabric, a faint blush creeping up her earlobes. "I have to go. Some things need to be said face to face to make a clean break." Lin Nuo let out a low, deep laugh, the vibration of his chest conducting through the fabric to Potts's palms. He raised his hand, his rough fingertips gently stroking the spot of the red mark through the silk scarf, with a highly suggestive movement. "Go ahead. I'll be waiting right here for you. If that man-child dares to lash out at you, I wouldn't mind going in and tearing this dilapidated villa apart." Potts's breathing lost its rhythm. The sense of security from being protected by absolute power allowed her originally tense nerves to relax completely. She nodded, pushed open the car door, and walked toward the familiar electronic gate in her high heels. The interior of the villa was a mess. There were scattered blueprints, empty wine bottles, and leftover pizza boxes everywhere. The sound of metal clashing in the underground room was still piercing. Potts walked down the stairs. Tony Stark was shirtless, the arc reactor on his chest emitting a ghostly blue light, but the black-gray vascular texture around it had spread further than yesterday. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was frantically dismantling a mechanical arm guard. Tony didn't even look up, sparks flying from the welding torch in his hand. "Jarvis, I said don't let anyone in." Potts stopped 3 steps away. She pulled a pre-printed white envelope from her exquisite leather bag and laid it flat on the greasy workbench nearby. Her voice was very soft, yet exceptionally clear. "I'm here to submit my resignation." The sound of welding stopped. Tony ripped off his goggles and turned around. He froze for 2 seconds, then gave a mocking smile. "Resignation? Pepper, stop messing around. With the company's stock in such a mess, you still have the mind to throw a tantrum at me." He reached for the coffee cup nearby, his tone full of impatience. "Go help me arrange a meeting with the military. I need time to perfect the Mark armor, only this thing can save Stark Industries." Potts did not move. She looked quietly at the man before her. For the past 10 years, whenever Tony spoke in this tone, she would carry it out without complaint. But now, she only felt pity. Potts extended her finger and tapped on the resignation letter. "Tony, I'm not joking. From today on, I am no longer your personal assistant, nor am I an employee of Stark Industries. You can clean up that mess yourself." Tony's hand holding the coffee cup froze in midair. He stared intently at the brand new haute couture suit on Potts, and then at the unfamiliar look in her eyes that was completely out of his control. Tony raised his voice, the sound echoing in the empty underground room. "You're leaving. If you leave me, where can you go? What other company in the US can offer you your current salary? Do you think those people on Wall Street really respect you? They only do it for my sake." Potts met his gaze without flinching. "They respect my business ability, not your surname, which only causes trouble." She lifted her chin, her tone resolute. "I have accepted the invitation from the Star Umbrella Group to officially serve as the global CEO." This sentence was like a thunderclap on flat ground, exploding in the laboratory. The porcelain cup in Tony's hand smashed onto the floor, shattering into pieces. He was completely enraged, the veins on his neck bulging. "Star Umbrella, that Asian fool who shorted my company while I was missing. You're actually going to work for him. Pepper, did your brain get caught in a door?" Potts gritted her teeth. "He is not a fool. His name is Lin Nuo. He understands how to run a company better than you, and he understands how to respect others better than you. Tony, you are just a coward hiding in a tin shell, while he is the true chess player. Tony roared and took a large step forward. Shut up. The violent emotional fluctuation caused the side effects of the palladium poisoning to erupt fully. Tony's face turned deathly pale, he clutched his chest and began to cough violently. Cough, cough, cough. A mouthful of blood was coughed directly into his palm. A shocking red. Potts instinctively wanted to step forward to support him. The habit formed over 10 years made her still feel a bit of reluctance when seeing Tony vomit blood. But her step only went halfway before she stopped abruptly. In her mind, she recalled the back of Tony telling her to get out during yesterday's storm. Then, she recalled the man who, in the dark night, pushed aside a giant rock with one hand, pulled her domineeringly into his arms, and fed her hot soup spoonful by spoonful. Her sympathy was completely extinguished at this moment. Take care, Mr. Stark. Potts withdrew her foot, not even looking at the pool of blood, and turned around without any lingering attachment, walking toward the stairs in her high heels. The crisp sound of her high heels became the coldest full stop in the underground room. Tony collapsed into the chair, watching Potts's white figure disappear at the doorway, his mouth full of a thick, bloody taste. His industrial empire that he was so proud of, and the woman he trusted the most, were at this moment uprooted and taken away completely by that man named Lin Nuo. Outside the villa, Potts opened the car door and sat in the back seat of the Maybach. Just as she closed the car door, before she could even adjust her breathing, Lin Nuo's large hand gripped the back of her neck, forcibly pulling her entire body over. Potts was pressed against the wide leather seat, Lin Nuo's tall body completely covering her. The intense, masculine pheromones overwhelmed her like a mountain and sea. He didn't say a word, bowing his head to seal her slightly parted red lips. This kiss was extremely domineering. He pried open her teeth, kissing her deeply and irresistibly. Potts was kissed until she couldn't catch her breath, her hands weakly clutching the collar of Lin Nuo's shirt. She had originally thought she could maintain absolute calm when facing Tony vomiting blood, but now, in Lin Nuo's arms, all her disguises collapsed, and she went completely soft. Lin Nuo's large hand slowly traveled up her slender waist, kneading that most sensitive soft spot through her suit jacket. Potts' body tensed up, emitting a soft, sweet moan, her eyes misting over with a hazy moisture. After a long while, Lin Nuo pulled back slightly. Their breaths mingled, Lin Nuo's lips pressed against the corner of her mouth, his voice hoarse. Well done, baby, you're really heartless. That piece of trash vomited blood, and you didn't even look back. Potts breathed heavily, her cheeks flushed, and even her voice was soft and trembling. Because I know who is the person who truly treats me well. Lin Nuo chuckled, opening his mouth to take her small earlobe, biting it in punishment. Remember what you just said. From now on, your whole self, from head to toe, even a single strand of hair, can only belong to me. Understand? Potts, made weak-kneed by that electric-like tremor, could only cling to his shoulders and nod obediently. Understood. I'll listen to everything you say. Lin Nuo's thumb heavily brushed over her swollen lips. Good girl. Let's go, I'll take you to see your new empire. The headquarters building of Star Umbrella Group. Outside the top-tier bulletproof glass, the Manhattan sunlight spilled onto Potts' white haute couture suit. The private elevator went straight to the top floor, Lin Nuo's large hand gripping Potts' slender wrist the entire time, with no intention of letting go. The elevator doors opened. A hallway filled with high-tech holographic projections came into view. Potts walked in her high heels, her steps somewhat unsteady. Lin Nuo's presence was too overbearing, she simply couldn't regain her previous sharp and decisive state. The two walked into the spacious and bright CEO office. Lin Nuo turned around directly, his tall frame pressing in, forcing Potts back toward the large leather sofa. The back of Potts' knees hit the edge of the sofa, and she lost her balance, sitting down. Lin Nuo knelt on one knee on the edge of the sofa, his hands braced on either side of Potts' body, completely caging her in. Boss, this is an office. Potts' breathing was shallow, and she turned her head away, not daring to look into his aggressively dark eyes. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his nose brushing against the side of Potts' face, his hot breath hitting her sensitive earlobe. He opened his mouth and unceremoniously took her rounded earlobe into it, nibbling gently. What about the office? Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse as his fingers flicked open the Hermes silk scarf around her neck. Every inch of tile here belongs to me. You, too, belong to me. Pot's whole body tensed up, her hands pressing against Lin Nuo's hard chest, her voice impossibly soft and sweet. Don't bite, it will leave a mark. Lin Nuo released her earlobe, his thumb heavily swiping across her red lips, smudging her lipstick slightly. What I want is to leave a mark. To make you remember that from now on, no one but me gets to order you around. Potts bit her lower lip, her cheeks burning. This kind of aggressive possessiveness was simply a fatal poison to a strong woman like her who had fought alone for so many years. Ding! The private encrypted communicator on the desk rang. Lin Nuo straightened up, casually adjusted his shirt collar, and walked unhurriedly to the desk to press the answer button. Betty's lazy voice came through. Boss, the show is starting. A holographic screen unfolded in midair. On the screen, Tony Stark's villa was in shambles. Tony was slumped on the sofa, his face deathly pale, completely unable to resist. Obadiah Stane was holding a nerve paralyzer, pressing it against the back of Tony's ear. Tony opened his mouth in agony, but could not make a sound. Obadiah sneered, reaching out and forcibly pulling the glowing arc reactor from Tony's chest. Look, Tony, this is the greatest legacy you've left for this world. Obadiah took the arc reactor and strode out of the villa. The screen went dark. Potts sat on the sofa, hands clasped together, her palms covered in cold sweat. She looked at Lin Nuo, her lips moving slightly, but she didn't know what to say. Heartbroken, Lin Nuo walked back to her side, pinched her chin, and forced her to look up. Potts shook her head, her voice trembling. I just think he deserves it. He gave his trust to Obadiah, but drove away the loyal people. Lin Nuo chuckled, his fingers sliding to the back of her neck and kneading gently. That's a good girl. Remember, from the moment you walked out of that house, that loser's life or death has nothing to do with you. Just then, the building's emergency alarm sounded abruptly. Harsh red lights flashed crazily outside the office. A mechanical female voice announced the situation. Warning, unknown armed intrusion detected. Security system is offline. Potts stood up in fright, but was pressed back into Lin Nuo's arms. Lin Nuo shielded Potts and took 2 steps back. Obadiah got the arc reactor. The next step is to clean up all witnesses and potential threats. The old guy has some nerve, daring to touch my people. The thick wooden door of the office was blown open by an external directional explosion. Wood splinters flew everywhere. 3 fully armed mercenaries rushed in, carrying assault rifles. They wore tactical masks, their movements extremely professional, and their muzzles were aimed directly at Lin Nuo and Potts. Potts whimpered, gripping Lin Nuo's shirt tightly and shrinking behind his broad chest. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his lips pressing against the top of Potts' head. Close your eyes, baby. The scene that follows is not suitable for children. Potts obediently squeezed her eyes shut, even holding her breath. The mercenaries pulled the triggers. Gunfire erupted. Bullets poured out. Lin Nuo had no intention of dodging. He shielded Potts behind him with one hand, while his other hand tore down a metal code rack from the side. The bullets hit Lin Nuo's pure black vibranium suit without even leaving a scratch, all turning into scrap metal and falling to the ground. The mercenaries stopped their actions, their gun barrels still smoking. Lin Nuo swung the metal code rack with one hand and hurled it directly at the nearest mercenary. Under the force of explosive raw power, the code rack smashed into the man's chest like a cannonball. With a sound of cracking bones, the mercenary flew backward, smashing through the corridor glass, his life or death unknown. The remaining 2 turned their guns. Lin Nuo took a long stride, covering the 3-meter distance and getting right in their faces. He gripped one man's wrist with his left hand and twisted hard, causing the rifle to drop. His right hand turned from a palm into a fist, smashing into the side of the opponent's neck. Under the heavy blow, the mercenary rolled his eyes and collapsed to the ground. The last one drew a military dagger from his thigh, holding it in a reverse grip and stabbing at Lin Nuo's throat. Lin Nuo tilted his head to avoid the blade, his fingers swiftly gripping the opponent's throat, lifting the burly man into midair with one hand. The feeling of suffocation made the mercenary struggle frantically, his legs kicking wildly. Lin Nuo increased the force in his hand expressionlessly, his 5 fingers tightening. Accompanied by the sound of a shattering larynx, he tossed the lifeless killer onto the ground. The whole process took less than 10 seconds. The entire office went quiet. Lin Nuo pulled a wet wipe from the table and slowly wiped his fingers. He walked to the sofa, looking at Potts, who was still shivering. Potts kept her eyes tightly closed, teardrops hanging on her eyelashes, looking extremely fragile. Lin Nuo threw away the wipe, bent down, and scooped her up horizontally. His voice returned to being deep and magnetic, carrying a seductive tone. Don't be afraid. The dirty things have all been cleaned up. Potts opened her eyes, avoiding the gruesome scene on the floor, and wrapped her arms tightly around Lin Nuo's neck. She buried her face in the man's neck, smelling the woody cologne scent that gave her peace of mind, her body still trembling slightly. Lin Nuo carried her to the intact lounge area and sat down, letting Potts straddle his sturdy thighs. Lin Nuo's large hand stroked Potts' back, soothing her breathing. Scared, Potts nodded, her eyes red. They were sent by Obadiah to silence me. With me here, even if the sky falls, it won't hit you. Lin Nuo cupped the back of her head and kissed her red lips. This kiss was gentle and lingering, full of comforting meaning. Potts' tense nerves slowly relaxed in this kiss, and she obediently opened her mouth, welcoming Lin Nuo's deepening. After a long while, their lips parted. Potts was blushing, panting as she leaned in Lin Nuo's arms. You were just so amazing. You weren't even afraid of bullets. Lin Nuo chuckled, his fingers drawing circles on her slender waist. What's that compared to anything? After you finish my work, there are even more amazing skills I can show you. Do you want to try? How could Potts not understand such words? Her ears turned bright red, and she balled her hands into fists, lightly punching Lin Nuo's chest. Don't joke about such things. We're still at the company. Lin Nuo bit her chin. How is this a joke? This is called adult communication. Just then, on the desk that had been half destroyed, the holographic projection automatically restored its connection. The security footage of Tony's villa was still continuing. On screen, Tony was crawling with difficulty toward the underground room, smashing open a glass case. He took out that old first-generation arc reactor from inside and forced it into his own chest. He was drenched in sweat, barely able to even stand. Subsequently, the screen switched to the manufacturing plant of Stark Industries in District 1. A giant mechanical monster, 3 meters tall and covered in heavy armor, crashed through the factory gate and appeared on the street. That was the Ironmonger, piloted by Obadiah. The Ironmonger was firing at full capacity, stomping a police car flat with one foot. The Gatling guns on its shoulders were firing wildly, and screams erupted on the street. Tony, wearing the unfinished Mark armor, flew over stumbling, attempting to stop the Ironmonger. But because he was using the old arc reactor, the power was severely insufficient, and he was pressed to the ground by the Ironmonger with one hand and beaten violently. The loud sound of metal clashing transmitted through the speakers throughout the office. Potts looked at Tony, who was almost beaten into scrap metal on the screen, and bit her lip tightly. 10 years of history made it impossible for her to watch this man actually die. The Ironmonger raised its heavy mechanical arm, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to Tony's head. Tears welled up in Potts' eyes, and she turned to hug Lin Nuo's neck, her voice filled with obvious pleading. Lin, Potts begged with red eyes. Please save him, okay? He is my former boss, and I don't want to watch him die just like that. Asking for mercy for your ex-boss. Lin Nuo did not rush to agree. Baby, when you show concern for another man's life right in front of your own man, aren't you disregarding me a bit too much? It's not like that, I didn't. Potts gasped softly. I just don't want to owe him anything. 10 years of my youth, I don't want to end up with the reputation of having stood by and watched him die. Watching him die is something I can't get past. If I save him, then he and I will be completely even. Lin Nuo clamped a large hand onto the back of her neck, pulling her close until their noses touched. You think you owe him. It's your 10 years of hard work that have been fed to the dogs. And now, you actually want to use what belongs to me to trade for that loser's life. Potts' cheeks burned, and she explained repeatedly. I am yours from head to toe. I just want peace of mind. Lin, I beg you. Lin Nuo let out an extremely low laugh, the vibration of his chest conducting through the fabric to the woman in his arms. His long fingers pinched her delicate chin, forcing her to look up. Prove it to me, call out something sweet. Potts was so ashamed that even her earlobes turned bright red, she bit her lower lip and called out softly. Hubby, that's a good girl, but I never do business at a loss. Since you want me to take action, you have to pay a deposit. A mist of moisture clouded Potts's eyes. What deposit do you want? Lin Nuo's gaze swept over her luscious red lips. When we get back to the hotel tonight, you have to cooperate with me on those more extreme things. It's only fair, help me make some real progress. Haven't you been craving my body for a long time? Don't come crying and begging for mercy when the time comes. Potts knew exactly how dangerous the adult things Lin Nuo was talking about were. But on the holographic screen, Tony was slammed hard against the wall by the ironmonger again, emitting a dull metallic crashing sound. She closed her eyes, completely compromising. Fine, I promise you, I'll listen to everything you say. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Just go quickly. That's a good girl. Lin Nuo lowered his head and kissed Potts's fair neck heavily. He deliberately increased the pressure, opening his mouth to suck and bite hard on that delicate skin, leaving a conspicuous red hickey as a mark. Potts let out an unbearable whimper, her hands clinging weakly to Lin Nuo's broad shoulders. Lin Nuo released her, lifting her from his lap and placing her on the sofa. He stood up straight, leisurely buttoning the top button of his shirt and straightening his pure black vibranium suit jacket. He looked at Potts's swollen lips, his tone carrying a touch of nonchalance. For you, I have no choice but to get this suit dirty. Potts leaned against the sofa back, gasping for fresh air, watching Lin Nuo push open the office door and walk out without looking back. In the hallway, Lin Nuo pressed the private communicator on his ear. Betty, locate the Sector 1 manufacturing plant and take over all surveillance access at the scene. Betty's lazy and coquettish voice came through. Boss, do you really want to wade into this muddy water? That guy named Tony can't even protect his own battery, wouldn't it be better to let him get smashed into scrap metal? That won't do. Lin Nuo stepped into his private elevator. Potts just agreed to a few good conditions, so I have to play the part well. Send the location over. Received. Boss, if you get your clothes dirty, I'll wash them for you tonight. Betty added, with a highly suggestive tone on the other end. On the street of the Sector 1 manufacturing plant. The road had been forcibly plowed into a half-meter deep trench by immense force. Asphalt and gravel were scattered everywhere, a roadside fire hydrant had snapped, and a column of water sprayed high into the air. Passers-by had long since fled in screams. Tony, wearing the silver and red, not yet fully complete Mark III armor, was held tightly by the throat by the ironmonger's massive metal hand and pressed into the muddy road. Because he was using the old, first-generation reactor, the armor's energy was critically low, and the light on his chest flickered, on the verge of going out at any moment. Obadiah sat in the ironmonger's cockpit, emitting an extremely arrogant, maniacal laugh through the external loudspeaker. Tony, you loser who can't even protect your own company. Do you really think that by building a toy, you can be a savior? Tony gritted his teeth, activating the armor's palm repulsors, firing an energy pulse at the ironmonger's chest plate. The ironmonger's armor was extremely thick. This level of attack only left a black mark on the surface and couldn't cause any substantial damage. Obadiah threw a backhand punch, the massive mechanical fist slamming directly into Tony's faceplate. The Mark III's head armor dented significantly, and alarms blared frantically in Tony's ears. Sir, the airframe damage rate has reached 40%, the right arm hydraulic system has failed, and the back flight wings are destroyed. Energy remains at 11%. It cannot continue to support combat. Jarvis's mechanical voice was full of warnings. Tony's mouth was filled with the taste of blood. The technology he was so proud of seemed so pale and powerless in the face of absolute volume and firepower. The company was lost, Potts had run away, and now he was going to lose his life here too. Obadiah controlled the ironmonger to stand up, and its thick mechanical leg stepped on Tony's chest. The metal groaned with a harsh, screeching sound as the Mark III's chest plate began to deform. Is this the product of your working behind closed doors? Stark Industries needs war machine, not these toys for children. Obadiah continued to apply pressure. You don't understand what the future is at all. Tony retorted with red eyes. The future, your future is under my foot. 30 years, Tony, I've been cleaning up messes for your father and for you like a nanny. Today, I'm taking back everything that belongs to me. Obadiah raised the heavy Gatling gun on his right arm, the muzzle aimed directly at Tony's flickering reactor. The barrel began to rotate, tongues of fire about to erupt. Tony closed his eyes, and what flashed through his mind was actually the image of Potts leaving him resolutely. Just at that moment, a sonic boom broke through the night sky. A pure black afterimage leapt down from the nearby overpass, landing squarely in the open space between the ironmonger and Tony. The concrete ground cracked inch by inch, the fissures spreading wildly in all directions. Surrounding glass was shattered by this powerful shockwave. Amidst the flying debris, Lin Nuo had one hand in his dress pants pocket, while the other was raised extremely casually. Gatling armor-piercing rounds poured out. Amidst the dense sound of metallic clashing, those armor-piercing rounds, capable of shattering armored vehicles, were completely blocked by Lin Nuo's palm. All the bullets struck his palm, sparking, then turned into shriveled scrap metal and fell to the ground. The machine gun fire ceased. Obadiah, sitting in the cockpit, looked at the surveillance screen and screamed. "How is this possible? What kind of monster are you?" Lin Nuo shook his hand, brushing off non-existent dust from his palm. His vibranium suit didn't even have a single scratch left on it. He ignored Obadiah and lowered his head, looking at Tony, who was lying on the ground unable to move. Lin Nuo shook his head, his tone full of extremely malicious mockery. "Tisk, tisk, tisk. Brother Tony, you've really fallen to a pathetic state, having your battery pulled by your own people and getting rubbed into the mud." Tony, looking through his damaged faceplate, saw the newcomer's face and his eyes reddened. "It's you, Lin Nuo. What are you doing here? Are you here to watch me make a fool of myself?" Tony roared, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Lin Nuo chuckled, striding over to Tony's side and looking down at him from above. "Your Potts was afraid you'd die too ugly a death, so she cried and begged me to save you. As her current man, I can't let my own woman down." Lin Nuo crouched down and patted Tony's broken metal helmet. "Oh right, in order to get me to take action, baby promised to thank me properly in bed tonight. All the things she has never tried before, she will try with me tonight." Tony's mind went blank. These few words were more lethal than any physical attack, piercing deeply into Tony's last shred of self-esteem. To save him, Potts had actually gone to submit herself to this fool. "Shut up, I'll kill you. Get lost." Tony tried to crawl up, but the armor, with its energy bottomed out, was completely uncontrollable, and he fell heavily back into the mud. Lin Nuo stood up and straightened his cuffs. "The woman you can't hold onto, let me handle it. The mess you can't deal with, you have to let me handle that too." Obadiah, completely ignored, fell into extreme rage. He didn't care who the man in front of him was, as long as he dared to block the way, he had to die. "Go to hell. So what if you're a major shareholder? Both of you are going to hell today." The ironmonger's engine emitted a deafening roar, its thrusters fully engaged. The mechanical behemoth, 3 meters tall and weighing several tons, bore down with the force of Mount Tai, swinging its massive mechanical fist, smashing it down towards Lin Nuo's head. The power of this strike could directly wreck a heavy tank. Tony roared out loud, "Get out of the way." Lin Nuo stood in place, without even making a move to dodge. He met the descending metallic giant fist, leisurely extending one hand. "Dodge." Lin Nuo turned his head, looking at Tony on the ground. "Open your eyes and watch carefully, brother Tony. I'll teach you what real power is." Bang! A thunderous boom exploded in the night sky. The shockwave sent the stagnant water on the ground several meters into the air. Tony closed his eyes, expecting Lin Nuo to be smashed into a pulp, but instead, water splashed all over him. The gruesome scene of flesh and blood he had imagined did not appear. Tony opened his mouth wide, completely unaware as muddy water poured in. He stared at the scene before him, which defied the laws of physics, his brain completely deadlocked. Lin Nuo stood steadily in place, one hand raised high. That distinct, bony palm had actually forcefully held up the ironmonger's metal fist, which was larger than a water vat. The pure black vibranium suit he wore didn't have a single extra wrinkle, and his leather shoes, stepping on the shattered asphalt, had only sunk in by half an inch. The golden ratio muscle lines were hidden beneath the white shirt. He looked gentle and refined, but in reality, he contained a violent power capable of destroying the world. Obadiah sat in the cockpit, his eyeballs nearly popping out. "This is impossible. What kind of monster are you?" He frantically pushed and pulled the control stick, the engine overloading and emitting a piercing, mournful wail. Sparks flew from the mechanical arm, but blocked by that hand of Lin Nuo's, it couldn't push down even a fraction. "Is that it?" Lin Nuo's tone was filled with extremely wicked mockery. He even had the leisure to lift his left hand and press the miniature communicator at his ear, his low voice transmitting across the channel. Baby, has the feed synced over? Sit in your chair and watch closely as your husband performs for you, tearing apart this piece of junk with his bare hands. Inside the top floor office of the Star Umbrella Group, Potts slumped into the large leather chair, staring at the floating holographic screen. In the image, that tall and straight man held up the sky with one hand, casually blocking the fatal strike of the steel giant. This extreme visual impact of violence, combined with the highly aggressive voice coming through the earpiece, caused Potts' breathing to lose its rhythm completely. She pressed her legs together. That intense feeling of being protected, carrying an indescribable pressure, made her body go so weak she couldn't exert any strength. I can see it clearly. Lin, be careful. Lin Nuo's voice carried a smile, and the hot breath he exhaled sprayed across Potts' sensitive earlobe through the communication network. What's this little scene? Watch clearly how I clean up this trash for you. You'd better start preparing yourself mentally for what you promised me earlier. When we get back to the hotel tonight, I have plenty of ways to punish you properly. You've been craving my body for so long, don't come crying and begging for mercy when the time comes. Potts' cheeks burned bright red, the scorching temperature spreading deep into her collar. That clear bite mark was still faintly burning. She bit her lower lip, letting out a whimper as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Everything is up to you, do whatever you want, just finish it quickly. I'm scared. Good girl. Cutting off the private line, Lin Nuo put away the smile at the corner of his mouth and tightened his 5 fingers instantly. Under the enhancement of the Hulk-level body rewarded by the system, violent power erupted completely within his perfect 8-pack abs and mermaid line. Creak, the piercing sound of metal twisting echoed through the night sky. The ironmonger's mechanical fist, forged from super alloy, was forcefully crushed flat by Lin Nuo with one hand. The thick internal cables snapped on the spot, sparks shot out, and short-circuited electric sparks flew everywhere. Obadiah was scared out of his wits and, in a panic, pressed the launch button for the shoulder-mounted micro-missiles. Lin Nuo didn't dodge or avoid it at all. He backhanded and grabbed the ironmonger's mechanical wrist, slightly bent his right leg, and exerted force from his waist and abdomen. Up. The massive mechanical beast, over 3 meters tall and weighing several tons, was actually swung into midair by his single arm. The missiles lost their target and slammed into an abandoned factory in the distance, exploding into a fireball. Meanwhile, the ironmonger traced a heavy semicircular arc in midair and was smashed hard by Lin Nuo against a remaining load-bearing wall nearby. The wall collapsed, bricks shattered, and dust rose everywhere. Lin Nuo shook his hand, loosened the tight tie around his neck with his long fingers, and strode forward with his long legs. My grandma using a sewing machine has more power than this piece of junk. Old bones, your workmanship is too rough. Tony lay in the mud pit, his mask more than half shattered. He gasped for air, his eyes fixed on Lin Nuo. This was not power a human should have. This is a pure monster. Lin Nuo, what exactly are you? Lin Nuo stopped, turned his head, and looked down at him from a superior position. His black eyes, filled with immense pressure, were full of mockery. Little brother Tony, you can't even protect the woman by your side, and you dare to ask me who I am. Tony felt a sweetness in his throat and nearly coughed up blood. These few words stabbed at his spine more than any physical blow, grinding his remaining pride into the dirt. Ahead, the ironmonger struggled to get up, its mechanical legs making a clicking sound. Lin Nuo didn't even look, lifting his long right leg and kicking heavily onto the ironmonger's chest plate. The powerful kinetic energy pierced directly through the composite armor. The outer protective plate, over 10 centimeters thick, buckled inward, embedding deeply into the internal drive shaft and completely jamming the core gears. Obadiah was shaken until his head was bloodied in the cockpit, unable to even shout a complete sentence. Lin Nuo walked closer, grabbing the root joint of the ironmonger's right arm with both hands. His 10 fingers, like high-pressure hydraulic pliers, forcefully dug into the gaps of the armor. Click, click. Lin Nuo's arm muscles bulged, the fabric of his pure white shirt pulled extremely tight, outlining the muscle lines that contained terrifying explosive power beneath. He successively snapped several rows of core circuits and high-strength hydraulic rods. Accompanied by the wailing sound of tearing metal, the ironmonger's entire thick mechanical right arm was ripped off alive by Lin Nuo. He casually threw the heavy severed arm next to Tony's face. Machine oil from the broken end splashed onto Tony's battered mark armor. Look at your technology. in the face of absolute violence, it's just a joke. Lin Nuo bent down and patted Tony's mud-covered metal helmet, a gesture that killed the spirit and punished the heart. Potts has suffered grievances for 10 years following you. From now on, she, her entire being, down to a single strand of her hair, belongs exclusively to me. You don't even deserve to look at her. Tony's chest heaved violently, the light of his old-style reactor flickered twice, and then it completely exhausted and went out. He dug his hands tightly into the mud, unwilling to accept it, yet he didn't even have the strength to stand up. Lin Nuo turned around and walked back toward the completely paralyzed ironmonger. He grabbed the edge of the armor plate around the cockpit with both hands, working from both sides, and tore with force. Rip. The supposedly indestructible cockpit cover was violently torn into two halves like a piece of paper, revealing the cockpit inside. Obadiah, his face covered in blood, looked in terror at the man who had descended like a demon god and hurriedly raised his hands to surrender. Don't kill me, major shareholder, Mr. Lin. Stark Industries has half of your share, we're on the same boat. I can give you all the technology. Lin Nuo revealed a wicked smile. Trash like you only pollutes the air if kept alive. He grabbed Obadiah's fat neck with one hand and hauled the old man out of the cockpit. The intense feeling of suffocation caused Obadiah to kick his legs wildly, but Lin Nuo didn't care at all, tossing him casually like a bag of trash onto the open ground a dozen meters away. Obadiah broke his ribs and rolled on the ground, wailing in pain. Thus, the ironmonger, which Tony viewed as an invincible nightmare, hadn't even lasted 3 minutes in Lin Nuo's hands and had completely turned into a pile of scrap metal. Lin Nuo straightened his tall, upright body, pulled a clean white handkerchief from his suit pocket, and leisurely wiped the small amount of machine oil stained on his knuckles. He pressed the communicator at his ear again, his tone returning to that overbearing and ambiguous style that could make one drown in it. Baby, is the show over? Are you satisfied with your husband's performance? On the other end of the communicator, Potts' voice was so soft it was almost melting, carrying a hint of a tremor. Satisfied. Lin, you are too amazing. Just saying I'm amazing isn't enough. I'll give you 10 minutes to come to the scene and pick up your husband from work. Lin Nuo tossed the dirty handkerchief into the muddy water. Put on that set of clothes custom made for you in the walk-in closet, you should understand my rules. Don't make me wait too long. Potts sat in front of the holographic screen, her legs unconsciously twisting together, the flush on her cheek spreading to her collarbone. She certainly understood what the rules Lin Nuo mentioned meant. It was a ritual of completely cutting off the past and surrendering to him entirely. The price for tonight would absolutely be an adult matter that would break through all her defenses. I understand. I'm coming right away. Husband, wait for me. The gale whipped up dust from the ruins of the District 1 manufacturing plant. Alternating red and blue police lights flickered at the edge of the night. The helicopter's massive propellers roared, landing smoothly on a patch of ground that could barely be considered flat. The cabin door was pushed open from the inside. Pepper Potts stepped onto the gangway in 10-centimeter red-bottomed heels. She was wrapped in an extremely oversized, solid black men's trench coat, the spare jacket Lin Nuo had previously left in the hotel's presidential suite. The hem of the trench coat snapped in the night wind, vaguely revealing the dark red silk camisole underneath that barely covered the tops of her thighs. Tony, lying in the mud, lifted his head. His gaze crossed over the pile of scrap metal that belonged to the ironmonger, and he saw the woman walking down the gangway clearly. Pepper. Tony's voice was hoarse, his mouth filled with the metallic taste of blood. Subconsciously, he still felt that this woman had come to pull him up. Pepper Potts stepped through the puddles full of oil and mud, not looking in Tony's direction at all. She walked straight toward the tall, upright man with one hand in his dress pant pocket. Lin Nuo strode forward, his large hand wrapping around Pepper Potts' slender waist, pulling her in with force. Pepper Potts let out a small cry, her whole body colliding with the man's broad, hard chest. I told you to change in 10 minutes, and you arrived right on time. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his high-bridged nose pressing against Pepper Potts' cheek, the hot breath spraying entirely onto her burning earlobe. Running out wearing so little, who are you trying to seduce? Pepper Potts instinctively clung to Lin Nuo's sturdy shoulders, panting softly, her ears turning bright red. The clothes you told me to change into. This piece was delivered according to the size you ordered last night. It was too thin inside, I had no choice but to wear your trench coat. Lin Nuo let out a deep, low laugh, the vibration of his chest conducting through the shirt fabric to the fragile porcelain doll in his arms. His rough fingertips pinch the soft flesh behind her waist. Other than me, if you dare let anyone else take another look, I'll lock you in the hotel room when we get back. Lin Nuo lowered his voice, biting her ear. I'll punish you properly with those tricks we haven't tried yet, and make sure you can't get out of bed for 3 days. Pepper Potts' body went limp, mist swirling in her eyes. She bit her lower lip, letting out a whimper as soft as a mosquito. I'll listen to everything you say. Only you can look. This intimate interaction between the two, performed as if no one else was around, fell perfectly into Tony's ears a dozen meters away. Tony opened his mouth wide, his bloodshot eyes full of madness. Pepper, what are you doing? Why are you leaning in that monster's arms? Are you crazy? Lin Nuo turned his head, using one hand to undo the top 2 buttons of his white shirt. He took off the vibranium suit jacket that was stained with a little engine oil, shook it out casually, and draped it directly over Pepper Potts' thin shoulders. He then pulled Pepper Potts to his side and turned around to face the loser on the ground. Brother Tony, why so loud? You've scared my baby. Lin Nuo's large hand gripped Pepper Potts' shoulder, his tone filled with condescending mockery. Let me introduce her. This is the new global executive president of the Star Umbrella Group. She is also my person. Tony's fists slammed into the muddy ground until they bled. Lin Nuo, what kind of low-handed tactics did you use to force her? Pepper has been with me for 10 years, it's absolutely impossible for her to leave with someone else. Force, Lin Nuo scoffed, his long fingers pinching Pepper Potts' delicate chin, forcing her to look up. Your foul mouth could insult a diamond into a glass marble. I spent an entire night holding her in my arms and coaxing her. Basic skills of a high-level player, you couldn't learn them in 8 lifetimes. Leaning in Lin Nuo's arms, Pepper Potts saw Tony's miserable state clearly. The broken armor, the extinguished reactor, his face covered in mud and blood. The once arrogant genius now didn't even have the strength to stand up. There was no heartache, only a clear boundary. Pepper Potts stepped back half a step from Lin Nuo's embrace. Under Tony's wide-eyed, extreme gaze, she turned around, cupped Lin Nuo's cheeks with both hands, and stood on tiptoe. Her red lips pressed directly against Lin Nuo's cheek. She deliberately increased the force, even opening her mouth to gently bite the man's jawline, leaving a distinct mark with a lipstick print. After finishing this act of declaring sovereignty, Pepper Potts' cheeks flushed red. She turned to look at her former boss on the ground, her voice steady, no longer possessing that past humility. Did you see clearly, Mr. Stark? I don't owe you anything anymore. Pepper Potts' tone was extremely firm. Consider these 10 years as me feeding a dog. From now on, my time, my everything, belongs to my husband. You aren't even worthy of a glance. Killing someone is one thing, but destroying their heart is another. This sentence was more effective than any heavy punch. Physical scrap metal was far less destructive than betrayal of the spirit. Tony's technology, which he took pride in, was dismantled like junk, and the woman he trusted most threw herself into another man's arms in front of him, calling him husband so submissively. Tony's vision went black, and the breath in his chest completely dissipated. PFF'd. A mouthful of blood sprayed onto the inside of his damaged mask. Tony's hands lost strength, and his whole body slammed back into the puddle, his eyes rolling back as he passed out completely. With such poor mental fortitude, you still try to play the savior. Lin Nuo's large hand wrapped around Pepper Potts' waist, not bothering to care about the life or death on the ground. He bent down and scooped Pepper Potts up horizontally. Ah! Pepper Potts' legs dangled in the air, and she could only cling tightly to Lin Nuo's neck, burying her burning face into the hollow of the man's neck. Lin Nuo walked steadily up the helicopter gangway. Job done. Let's go back and collect your deposit. The cabin door closed, isolating the night rain and police sirens outside. The interior of the cabin was an extremely luxurious and private space. The soundproof partition rose, and the pilot in the front couldn't hear any movement from the back seat at all. The leather sofa was extremely spacious. Lin Nuo threw Pepper Potts directly onto the sofa. His tall body immediately pressed down, one knee kneeling outside of Pepper Potts' legs, trapping her completely in this small area. You were so proactive in front of your ex just now, why are you shaking now? Lin Nuo's rough fingertips rubbed against Pepper Potts' swollen lips. Pepper Potts' small chest heaved violently. The intense masculine scent rushed toward her, pressing down on her until she couldn't speak. I'm just a little cold. Pepper Potts turned her head away, not daring to look into his aggressive black eyes. Cold, Lin Nuo chuckled. His large hand reached directly through the hem of the trench coat, through the thin silk camisole, and rested on her slender waist. Then let me warm you up. The temperature of his large hand was extremely high, constantly kneading the most sensitive soft flesh. Pepper Potts let out a whimper, her hands pushing weakly against Lin Nuo's broad chest. Don't, not here. Didn't you say we were going back to the hotel? It takes 40 minutes to fly back to Manhattan. Lin Nuo lowered his head, opening his mouth to capture Pepper Potts's petite earlobe, even sweeping his tongue across the sensitive contour. With so much time, if we don't do some adult activities beforehand to warm up, what energy will you have to cooperate with me for the big show tonight? That numbing sensation made her whole body soft and weak. She couldn't resist this high-level teasing. Husband, please, leave me some dignity. Begging me is useless. Lin Nuo turned his head, kissing her slender neck, sucking heavily on that patch of fair skin, leaving a red mark even deeper than last night's. You were protecting me so much down there earlier, why are you so soft now? Pepper Potts felt a mix of shame and a strange sense of sinking. She could only obediently comply, letting Lin Nuo's actions become increasingly wanton. Lin Nuo held the back of her head with one hand, pried open her teeth, and kissed her until she was nearly suffocating. The sound of their lips and teeth intertwining was infinitely magnified in the quiet cabin. Pepper Potts was kissed until her brain was oxygen-deprived, tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. Lin Nuo pulled back slightly, his long fingers hooking the thin shoulder strap of the silk camisole. The fabric slid down her rounded shoulders. You can't take even this much. You had plenty of guts when you were craving my body. Lin Nuo's fingertips traced her exquisite collarbone. If you dare to call a halt when we get back, just see what more excessive methods I'll use to handle you. Pepper Potts buried her face completely into Lin Nuo's sturdy chest, not daring to reply at all. Tonight, when they returned to the presidential suite, she would definitely be devoured clean by this man using the most forceful means. Just as this ambiguous tug of war reached its peak, a long-lost, rapid buzzing sound from the system exploded deep within Lin Nuo's mind. Ding! Detected that the original male lead, Tony Stark, has had his mental defenses completely collapse. Achievement unlocked. Ego shattered. Ding! Critical hit roulette triggered. Now drawing your super gift package. Draw complete. Congratulations to the host for intercepting the original male lead's core destiny reward, obtained, Tony Stark's top-tier creativity. The mechanical voice deep within his mind had just faded when an immense stream of data and a storm of inspiration flooded directly into Lin Nuo's brain. Not only were all the iterative concepts for the Mark armor branded into his consciousness at this moment, but so were the sparks of inspiration for various advanced weapons, nanotechnology, and even spatial physics for the next few decades. Coupled with the ultimate mechanical affinity he had previously drawn, the current Lin Nuo could even hammer out a curvature spaceship from a pile of scrap metal in the middle of nowhere. The last shred of Tony Stark's pride, that brain he boasted was cursed with knowledge, had now been uprooted by Lin Nuo and claimed as his own. The soundproofing inside the cabin was excellent, completely blocking out the roar of the propellers. Potts huddled inside Lin Nuo's large, pure black men's trench coat, the searing heat on her cheeks refusing to fade. She could feel an extremely aggressive gaze from above her head. Lin Nuo's large palm cupped the back of her head, his fingers threading through her soft blonde hair as he applied slight pressure to pull her toward him. Why are you keeping your head down? Potts looked up, her red lips slightly parted, gasping for breath. Honey, I'm a bit tired. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his high-bridged nose pressing directly against hers, their breaths mingling. Calling it quits already. You were quite spirited when you were protecting me down there and telling your former boss to get lost, weren't you? Potts bit her lower lip, her voice soft and sweet. That's because he insulted you. I couldn't let him talk about you like that. You only acted because of me. Lin Nuo let out a low chuckle, his rough fingertips pressing against her luscious red lips, gently rubbing them. He opened his mouth and unceremoniously took her sensitive earlobe between his teeth, nibbling gently, forcing a moan of unbearable desire from Potts. Good girl. But, one thing at a time. Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse, carrying absolute control. Does what you promised me earlier still count? We agreed you'd help me make some real progress, and use adult matters as a down payment. Now, we have 30 minutes before we reach the hotel. Have you decided how you're going to be punished? Potts' body turned to jelly, her hands resting limply on Lin Nuo's broad shoulders. The suffocating feeling of being completely surrounded left her with nowhere to escape. Tears welled up in Potts' eyes. Everything is up to you. You can punish me however you want. I absolutely won't hide. Lin Nuo gripped her chin and kissed her heavily. This kiss was extremely overbearing, leaving no room for retreat. He pried open her pearly teeth, wantonly plundering every inch of air in her mouth. Potts was dizzy from the kiss, able only to instinctively respond, her hands tightly clutching the collar of his white shirt. The sound of their kissing was amplified infinitely in the quiet cabin. When the kiss ended, Potts leaned against his solid chest, her breathing completely out of rhythm. Lin Nuo's fingertips traced her fair collarbone, pressing heavily on that delicate skin. Save some energy. Tonight, there will be plenty of times for you to cry and beg for mercy. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the presidential suite through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Potts rubbed her sore wrists, struggling to open her eyes. She was wrapped in a large quilt, and the other half of the bed was already empty. She propped herself up and scanned the suite. In front of the bar in the living room, Lin Nuo was wearing a loose, pure black bathrobe, holding an electronic stylus, and rapidly drawing something on a holographic projection board. His focused expression, combined with his strong, chiseled facial features, made Potts stare in a daze for a moment. She forced her weak legs to support her, threw on a piece of clothing at random, and walked on tiptoe behind Lin Nuo. Without turning his head, Lin Nuo sensed her footsteps. Awake, he stretched out his long arm, pulled Potts directly into his arms, and sat her on his lap. Potts let out a small cry, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. Lin Nuo pinched her cheek, his fingertips tracing the corner of her eye. What are you looking at, so mesmerized? Potts looked at the floating holographic projection board. On it were dense molecular formulas and a set of highly sci-fi, streamlined armor blueprints. Unlike the clunky mechanical feel of Tony's, the set Lin Nuo drew used more lightweight, folding nanotechnology, and the energy conduction matrix was several generations more advanced than yesterday's arc reactor. Having spent 10 years at Stark Industries, Potts definitely had top-tier blueprint evaluation skills. She was completely stunned, her red lips slightly parted, a look of disbelief on her face. Potts' voice trembled, her sense of admiration infinitely magnified. Are these blueprints for an armor? My God, even the supercomputers in Tony's lab couldn't calculate these energy feedback circuits. How did you do it? Lin Nuo scoffed lightly and tossed the electronic pen onto the bar. His large palm gripped Potts' slender wrist, his tone firm. Does that man-child's toy, hammered out of scrap metal, even deserve to be called armor? This is the Star Umbrella Group's future cutting-edge individual combat weapon project. His technology is completely obsolete. Potts leaned against Lin Nuo's chest, unable to hide the fanaticism in her eyes. She looked up, making no secret of her extreme infatuation with this man. Honey, how many more secrets do you have that I don't know about? Lin Nuo lowered his head and bit her lip heavily again. If you want to know my secrets, just asking with your mouth isn't enough. Haven't you been punished enough last night? Potts was terrified and begged for mercy repeatedly. No. No more. I still have to go to the Star Umbrella headquarters to handle my onboarding today, I really don't have any strength left. Lin Nuo let go, picked up the black coffee nearby, and took a sip. I'll let you off the hook. We do have real business to attend to today. That loser didn't die, so he's definitely going to come out and try to stay relevant again. As soon as he finished speaking, the tablet Potts had casually placed on the bar emitted a rapid alert sound. Potts picked up the tablet and tapped the screen. On the screen was a massive press conference scene. Tony Stark was wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, with obvious bruises and scrapes on his face. He stood at the podium, holding a speech, facing the barrage of media reporters below. Potts frowned slightly. A press conference. Lin Nuo leaned back in his chair, unconcerned. Just a death throw. If he doesn't make a big splash, Stark Industries stock will plummet to the center of the earth when the market opens today. In the video, Colonel Rhodes from the military was trying to smooth things over, attempting to frame last night's Ironmonger incident as an accidental security drill. Tony looked at the speech in his hand, silent for a long time. He put down the paper, raised his head, and looked directly into the camera. Tony took a breath, his tone incredibly firm. The truth is, I am Iron Man. The group of reporters below exploded instantly, flashbulbs flashing wildly. Tony publicly admitted his identity, attempting to use this heroic declaration to regain everything he had lost and prove his value to the world. Potts watched the screen, surprisingly calm, with no ripples in her heart anymore. She shook her head. He's still so arrogant. But a few seconds later, Potts refreshed the real-time news feed on the screen with her finger. Her expression suddenly turned strange, and then she couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Lin Nuo raised his eyebrows slightly. What's wrong? Potts handed the tablet to Lin Nuo, her eyes full of undisguised amusement, even the satisfaction of watching a show. Honey, Tony did admit he is Iron Man. But, take a look at the top trending search on all the major newspapers and headlines in the US today. Lin Nuo swept his gaze over the tablet Potts handed over. On the screen were the top headlines from major US newspapers and social media today. Tony Stark's line at the press conference, "I am Iron Man," had indeed caused a huge uproar. But the number one trending topic was not him at all. The topic was named, Iron Man. No, come see the mysterious Chinese emperor who tore apart the mecha with his bare hands. The accompanying image was a screenshot of an extremely blurry, long-distance night shot video. In the night rain, Lin Nuo was wearing a pure white shirt, holding up the sky with one hand, lifting the ironmonger, which was larger than a tank, above his head. And another photo that had been liked millions of times was of Lin Nuo at the edge of the ruins, draping a large, pure black trench coat over Potts' slender shoulders, pulling her into his arms with a dominant motion. Some gossip media even provided a sensational subtitle, "Stark admits his identity, but cannot keep the woman he trusts the most. The mysterious emperor steals his love in front of him." Lin Nuo's Adam's apple rolled, and he let out a very low, muffled laugh. He casually tossed the tablet onto the bar counter. Lin Nuo tapped his fingers on the table, his tone full of undisguised mockery. This is just a freebie. That man-child wanted to show off in front of the whole world to save face, but ended up becoming the background board himself. Now the whole internet is studying how I tore apart that pile of scrap metal with my bare hands. Potts leaned against the edge of the bar, the flush on her cheeks refusing to fade. She bit her lower lip, her voice soft and glutinous. The media can't find your identity at all. They are all calling you the mysterious emperor now. Lin Nuo turned his head, his tall body pressing directly over. He reached out his long arm, propping it beside Potts, trapping her completely in his territory. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his high-bridged nose almost touching Potts' cheek, his warm breath spraying onto her sensitive earlobe without reservation. Then whose emperor am I? Potts' breathing was completely disordered. The extreme aggression belonging to this man left her nowhere to run. She raised her head, meeting that possessive gaze, and spoke as softly as a mosquito. Mine, just mine alone. Lin Nuo's slender fingers lifted, his rough fingertips rubbing heavily across Potts' delicate red lips, smearing a bit of lipstick. Lin Nuo opened his mouth, unceremoniously capturing her delicate earlobe and nibbling gently. When you were crying and begging for mercy in bed last night, that's not what you said. Finding it funny to watch others make a fool of themselves. I only collected half the debt from last night, how do you plan to pay back the rest? That electric, shivering sensation made Potts' body turn into a puddle of water. Her hands weakly grabbed Lin Nuo's shirt collar, and she let out a moan of unbearable pleasure. Potts' eyes filled with a layer of mist, revealing a hint of begging for mercy. Don't bite, it will leave a mark. I have to go to the company to check in later. If you punish me like this again, I really won't be able to walk. Lin Nuo's large hand clamped onto the back of her neck, forcing her to look up, and he sealed those red lips directly. What are you afraid of? He forcibly pried open her teeth, driving straight in, wantonly plundering all the air in her mouth. The sound of water was infinitely magnified in the quiet presidential suite. Potts was kissed until her brain was oxygen deprived, and she could only instinctively cling to Lin Nuo's solid shoulders, drowning in this deep kiss. After a long time, Lin Nuo pulled back half an inch. He looked at Potts' red and swollen lips, extremely satisfied. Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse. If your legs are weak and you can't walk, I'll carry you into the company front door. Let your former colleagues take a good look at how you crave my body and how you were eaten clean by me. Potts was so ashamed that even her earlobes turned red, burying her face completely into Lin Nuo's broad chest, not daring to talk back at all. At the same time, in a spare safe house on Malibu Beach, Tony Stark stared at the trending Twitter search on the holographic projection, his eyes bloodshot. His face was deathly pale due to palladium poisoning. Tony roared, slamming his palm onto the metal workbench. "Jarvis, cut off all these messy news links. I don't want to see that fool's face again." Jarvis's mechanical voice sounded steadily. "Sir, due to the high data traffic, this is a phenomenal topic across the US right now. The public's focus is not on your public identity, but on the non-physical common sense power displayed by that mysterious man in the video and Miss Potts's relationship with him." These words were like stabbing a knife directly into Tony's spine. Tony kicked away the empty coffee cup nearby. Porcelain shards scattered all over the floor. He had intended to use the line, "I am Iron Man," to once again become the center of attention, declaring that he was the genius who dominated the future. And the result? Everyone was discussing that monster who took apart the Ironmonger like a toy. What made him even more unable to accept it was that those media outlets were actually shipping Lin Nuo and Potts across the whole internet. Tony gritted his teeth, and a metallic taste rose in his mouth again. Brute force. It's all the tricks of a barbarian. What does he know about future technology? Can a few muscles save the world? Tony slumped into his chair, pulling up the unfinished blueprints for the Mark armor. He stared fixedly at the screen, his voice extremely paranoid. "Scrap the design plan for Mark IV and start over. I want to add a system to counter giant forces. I will absolutely not lose to a barbarian of unknown origin. I want to prove to Pepper that she chose the wrong person." Jarvis reminded him, "Sir, your blood toxicity has reached 19%. If you force research in this state, your body functions will collapse faster than expected." Tony coughed up a mouthful of blood. "Do as I say. I am the only genius." At 10 a.m., the Maybach stopped steadily downstairs at the Star Umbrella Group headquarters. Lin Nuo stepped out of the car first. He turned around, ignoring the gazes of the security personnel nearby, and reached his long arm directly into the carriage, forcefully gripping Potts's slender wrist and pulling her out. Potts was wearing 10-centimeter red-bottomed high heels, her steps slightly panicked, and she bumped directly into Lin Nuo's hard chest. Potts lowered her voice, trying to distance herself a little. The Hermes silk scarf around her neck was tied very tightly, afraid that others would see the exclusive mark left last night. "So many people are watching. Boss." Lin Nuo not only didn't let go, but stepped even closer. He lowered his head, opened his mouth, and licked suggestively at the fair side of Potts's neck. "What, now you know how to care about your face?" Potts stiffened all over, gasped, and her legs were so soft she could only obediently lean against Lin Nuo's side. Lin Nuo tugged at his tie. "When you forced me to punish you with those even more excessive things last night, I didn't see you being so reserved. Follow me closely. From today on, you need to get used to belonging to me in front of everyone." The two took the private elevator directly to the top floor. The elevator doors slid open to both sides. Betty Ross was wearing a wine-red professional suit, holding several encrypted documents, and was leaning against the glass wall of the holographic corridor. Seeing Lin Nuo walk out, Betty's gaze naturally fell on Potts beside him. Two completely different women, their gazes intersected in the air. Betty let out a charming, light laugh and stepped forward. She leaned against Lin Nuo's other side very naturally, even rubbing her shoulder lightly against Lin Nuo's arm. Betty's gaze swept brazenly over Potts's tightly tied silk scarf, her tone revealing a hint of provocation. "Boss, the battle last night was very intense. How many sets of clothes were torn? Is this the new executive president who made Tony Stark cry?" Potts didn't retreat at all, but instead took the initiative to meet Betty's gaze. Her voice was steady. "Hello, I am Pepper Potts. I have taken over the commercial operations of Star Umbrella for the future." Lin Nuo took it all in. This level of jealousy was, in his view, an excellent spice. He walked to the large boss chair and sat down, tapping his fingers on the table. Potts stood on the left side of the desk, and Betty stood on the right. Lin Nuo leaned back in his chair, his long legs crossed, revealing a posture of controlling the overall situation. "All right, from now on, we are all on the same team. Biotechnology of Star Umbrella belongs to Betty, and commercial finance belongs to Potts. You each do your own job well." Lin Nuo turned his head and looked at Betty. "Talk about business. How did the thing I asked you to do with that huge sum of money intercepted yesterday go? Betty stepped forward and handed the documents in her hand to Lin Nuo. She deliberately bent down, her red lips close to Lin Nuo's ear, whispering softly. How could I dare to neglect what the boss entrusted? Within 3 hours, we injected capital and fully acquired several top independent genetic engineering laboratories in New York. The live test site for the primary super speed regeneration factor is all ready. Lin Nuo's fingertips slid across the edge of the document. Where is the site? Empire State University. Empire State University. Upon hearing these words, Lin Nuo's Adam's apple bobbed as he let out a low, muffled chuckle. This place was a famous landmark in the Marvel Universe. Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, those high-quality heroines of destiny were all gathered in this ivory tower. This feeling of not having to search the whole world, but instead directly keeping top-tier prey within his own fish pond, greatly satisfied his twisted sense of pleasure. High-end hunters often appear in the guise of school board members. Lin Nuo leaned back against the leather chair, his long legs crossed, his gaze sweeping over the two women before him. Betty was wearing a wine-red suit skirt with the collar slightly open, while Potts was in a pure white suit, a silk scarf tied around her neck. Well done. Lin Nuo reached out with a long arm, directly gripping Betty's wrist and pulling her to sit on the armrest of his boss chair. Betty leaned into his embrace, coquettishly tilting her head up. Boss, shouldn't you give me some tangible reward for my efficiency? Standing to the side, Potts felt her cheeks burning again as she watched Betty be so straightforward. She bit her lower lip, forcing herself to look away, yet she couldn't help but steal glances at that domineering man. Lin Nuo's rough fingertips pinched Betty's delicate chin, his high-bridged nose leaning close to her cheek. What kind of reward do you want? Didn't feed you enough last night, so you came to the office to collect your debt today. Betty's eyes darted around, her fingers tracing circles on the collar of Lin Nuo's white shirt. That's because the boss is biased. You found a new lover and left me all alone in the cold laboratory. I don't care, you have to make it up to me tonight. Lin Nuo let out a soft snort, his large hand pressing gently against the small of Betty's back. With such a big appetite, aren't you afraid of getting stuffed? He turned his head, his gaze locked directly onto the restless Potts. Potts, bring the financial statements over. As if granted an amnesty, Potts hurriedly took the documents, walked around the desk, and went to the other side of Lin Nuo. Just as she handed over the documents, Lin Nuo didn't take them, but instead directly gripped her slender wrist. Ah! Potts let out a soft cry, losing her balance, and was forcibly pulled down by Lin Nuo, falling onto his other thigh. The man's broad chest radiated an aggressive heat. Potts instinctively braced her hands against his shoulders, her ears turning bright red. Lin, we're still discussing business. With one in each arm, this ultimate sense of control made the desire in Lin Nuo's eyes surge. He lowered his head, his lips pressing against Potts' ear, his warm breath spraying without reservation. Business is finished, now it's family matters. Baby, you promised last night to listen to me completely, are you going back on your word today? Potts' breathing was completely disrupted, she could feel Betty's scrutinizing gaze from the side. No, I'm not going back on my word. Good girl. Lin Nuo opened his mouth and unceremoniously took hold of Potts' sensitive earlobe, nibbling gently. Potts let out a whimper as soft as a mosquito's buzz, her body turning into a puddle of water. Watching this scene, Betty didn't get angry, instead, she giggled coquettishly. Boss, if you bully her to tears, who's going to look at the company's reports? I won't deal with those headache-inducing numbers. Lin Nuo released Potts' earlobe, his thumb heavily brushing across her luscious red lips. If I don't push her a little, how will she know who the real master is? Potts, come with me to Empire State University this afternoon. Potts panted, her eyes welling up with mist. What are we doing at the university? As the newly appointed largest school board member, I naturally have to inspect my private territory. At 2 in the afternoon, the sunlight in Manhattan was just right. The stretched armored Maybach drove steadily on the road to Empire State University. Inside the carriage, the partition rose, blocking the driver's view. Potts huddled in the spacious leather seat, hands clasped, her heart beating fast. Lin Nuo sat beside her, holding a glass of red wine, sipping it unhurriedly. The top 2 buttons of his haute couture shirt were undone, revealing the lines of his solid pectoral muscles and his Adam's apple. Why are you sitting so far away? Afraid I'll eat you. Lin Nuo put down his wine glass, his tone calm but carrying an absolute sense of oppression. Potts blushed and shifted her body closer. No, I was just thinking about the progress of the school project. Lin Nuo let out a very low laugh, his long arms stretching out to wrap around her slender waist, pressing her directly against his broad chest. Potts collided with his hard muscles, her breath filled with that woody cologne scent that could make one sink into oblivion. Still lying, Lin Nuo's rough fingertips pinched the soft flesh at the small of her back, kneading it bit by bit. I know exactly what's in your little head. You haven't paid enough of the deposit from last night, so you're thinking about how to make up for it in the car right now. Potts was so ashamed she wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Hubby, not here. We're about to arrive at the school. I want you to get out of the car with this feeling. Lin Nuo lowered his head and kissed her fair neck. He deliberately avoided the area covered by the silk scarf and sucked hard on the perfect skin on the other side. A tingling sensation of trembling instantly spread through her whole body. Potts' hands weakly clutched his shirt. She didn't even have the strength to push him away. No, there will be marks. What if others see? Let them see. My person, and I still have to care about others' opinions. Lin Nuo pried open her pearly teeth, driving straight in, wantonly plundering the air in her mouth. Potts was kissed until her brain was oxygen deprived. She could only instinctively respond, her hands softly wrapping around his neck. It wasn't until the car slowed down that Lin Nuo pulled back half an inch. He looked at Potts's dazed eyes and her red, swollen lips, very satisfied. When you get out of the car later, keep this state. You are going as the spokesperson for the consortium, so suppress the arrogance of those pedants for me. If anything happens, I'll take care of it for you. Potts panted heavily and nodded obediently. Everything as you say. The car stopped in front of the administration building of Empire State University. The school's senior management had long been lined up, waiting with beaming smiles for this mysterious top financial tycoon. A ruthless person who could buy the entire school's bioengineering department in one go and add hundreds of millions of US dollars in educational sponsorship was definitely a god of wealth they couldn't afford to offend. The car door opened. Lin Nuo got out of the car first, buttoning his suit jacket with one hand. He turned around and reached that large, distinctively knuckled hand into the car. Potts, wearing high heels, placed her slender hand on his palm and got out of the car with his help. There was still a flush on her face, but when facing the school's senior management, she had quickly switched into the mode of a decisive and capable businesswoman. This sense of contrast was exactly what Lin Nuo had personally trained into her. Mr. Lin, Ms. Potts, welcome to Empire State University. The silver-haired principal hurried forward, his posture extremely humble. Lin Nuo didn't even look at his outstretched hand, keeping one hand in his dress trouser pocket. Lead the way. Let's go see the newly built gene laboratory. The group marched imposingly through the campus tree-lined path. Along the way, many young and vibrant female college students cast curious and infatuated gazes. Lin Nuo's high-status aura, filled with oppression and the scent of money, was simply a dimension reduction strike to these girls who had not yet seen much of the world. Walking by his side, Potts felt the fervent gazes around them and quietly leaned closer to Lin Nuo, asserting her ownership. Lin Nuo noticed her little action and let out a muffled chuckle. His large hand directly gripped her waist and pulled her closer into his embrace. Potts' body tensed, then immediately relaxed, letting him hold her in public. The inspection process went very smoothly. The school had no objections and fully accepted Star Umbrella Group's renovation plan for the laboratory. Betty was already in the laboratory directing the technicians to install the equipment. Lin Nuo took a few looks and felt it was somewhat boring. Potts, you stay here and check the accounts with them. I'm going out for some air. Lin Nuo released her waist, his tone brooking no argument. Potts was very obedient and didn't ask another word. Okay, hubby, don't go too far. Leaving the newly built laboratory building, Lin Nuo wandered aimlessly around the campus. Have to say, the university atmosphere was indeed nice. The breath of youth was completely different from the stench of money in Manhattan. Now that he held top-tier creative power, looking at the so-called cutting-edge topics in this school was as ridiculous as a college student looking at kindergarten addition and subtraction. Unknowingly, he stopped in front of an ancient and huge building. Empire State University Central Library. Lin Nuo raised an eyebrow. According to his experience from watching countless films before transmigrating, a place like a library was always an excellent location for bumping into beautiful female straight-A students. He strode forward with his long legs and pushed open the heavy glass door of the library. It was very quiet inside, with only the sound of turning pages. Lin Nuo strolled casually among the bookshelves. His tall, upright figure and that highly aggressive face caused many girls who were studying to frequently glance his way. Just as he walked to the corner of the high-energy physics section, a flash of bright blonde hair caught his eye. The afternoon sun shone through the library's tall floor-to-ceiling windows, casting dappled light and shadows onto the carpet. The corner of the high-energy physics section was extremely quiet, with barely even the sound of turning pages. A blonde girl lay sprawled across the walnut-long table. She was wearing her Empire State University uniform shirt, the collar slightly open, revealing a fair neck. Her slender fingers gripped a black gel pen, the tip constantly crossing out and rewriting on the draft paper, emitting an impatient rustling sound. Gwen Stacy bit her lower lip, her brows knitted tightly together. The table was piled high with heavy books about cross-species genetic decay. But that core algorithm, which had had her stuck for a full 3 months, remained like a dead wall, impossible to derive no matter what. The direction is wrong. Gwen turned her head, her gaze crashing into a pure white high-end custom shirt. Lin Nuo had appeared behind her without her noticing. He had one hand in his dress pant pocket, while the other rested casually on the back of the chair next to Gwen. His tall, upright frame leaned forward naturally, half encircling her in this private corner. The aggressively woody scent of his cologne instantly overwhelmed the smell of paper in the library, wrapping tightly around Gwen. Gwen's breathing lost its rhythm, and she shrank back, her back pressing against the chair. "Who are you?" Lin Nuo did not answer. His gaze drifted over her shoulder, landing on the draft paper filled with garbled code. His tone was calm, exuding the absolute certainty of someone in a position of power. The RNA reverse transcriptase parameters are set 3 orders of magnitude too low. If you use such conservative data for cross-species gene splicing, the result of a forced fusion is that the living cells will completely collapse within 2 hours, turning into a pile of mush. Gwen had a strong competitive streak, and upon hearing such a dismissive verdict, she immediately straightened her back. This is already the maximum tolerance threshold derived by the supercomputer. If you increase the parameters any further, the gene chain will break on the spot. You don't even understand basic biological logic, so don't just talk big here. Lin Nuo let out a low, muffled laugh, the vibration of his chest right beside Gwen's ear. He leaned down, his nose almost brushing against Gwen's cheek. Talking big, Lin Nuo reached out with his long, slender fingers and directly grasped Gwen's right hand that was holding the pen. The man's palm was burning hot, his rough fingertips inadvertently brushing against the back of her delicate hand. Gwen tensed up, gasping for air. That electric, shivering sensation shot straight from the back of her hand to her scalp. She wanted to pull her hand back, but it was firmly controlled by Lin Nuo's large hand, unable to move. "Watch closely. I'll teach you what dimensional reduction strikes are." Lin Nuo held her hand, guiding the pen tip to move rapidly across the blank draft paper. Extremely complex, brand new variant formulas, energy transmission architectures, and cell recombination matrices poured out like flowing water. Those theories that had originally seemed completely contradictory to Gwen now formed a perfect, seamless closed loop under Lin Nuo's pen. The two were extremely close. Gwen had intended to resist this overly intimate gesture, but when her gaze fell upon the paper, she was completely stunned. The storm of inspiration in her brain was completely ignited. This is an epoch-making solution that had never appeared before. It not only avoided the risk of genetic collapse but also perfectly achieved a smooth transition between 2 different sequences. The deadlock that had troubled her entire team for months hadn't even lasted half a minute in this man's hands. In the face of absolute intellectual crushing, the pride of the top student was shattered. What followed was a fanatical sense of admiration. Lin Nuo released her hand. The gel pen dropped onto the table with a crisp sound. He straightened up, his long fingers loosening his tie, looking down at her. "Do you understand?" Gwen was panting, her eyes fixed tightly on that piece of paper, her voice even trembling. This is impossible. You reversed the decay process. This kind of formula, even Oscorp's chief scientist couldn't derive it. How on earth did you do it?" Lin Nuo let out a soft scoff. "Having just acquired top-tier creativity. Writing this kind of thing was as boring as doing 1 + 1 = 2. He reached out a finger, his rough fingertip tapping lightly on Gwen's smooth forehead. To be stuck on such a small problem for 3 months, little student, your brain still needs a lot of training. Gwen shrank back from the touch, her cheeks turning even redder. She looked up at the man before her with sharp, handsome features and a hint of a refined scoundrel temperament. Her heartbeat had completely lost control. She bit her lower lip, her tone full of curiosity and inquiry toward the strong. Who exactly are you? Lin Nuo pulled a pure black gold-stamped business card from the inner pocket of his suit. He held it between 2 fingers and gently tucked it into the open collar of Gwen's shirt. The hard edge of the business card brushed against her fair collarbone. Ah! Gwen let out a soft, sweet cry, her hands instinctively shielding her chest. Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse, carrying a strong sense of temptation. Star Umbrella Group, Lin Nuo. Of course, you can also call me the new school board director. This is the first lesson I've given you today. Free of charge. Gwen held the business card, her mind in a complete mess. You bought the school's laboratory. What, do you want to come work under me? Lin Nuo's large hand landed on the top of her head, ruffling her soft blonde hair. Go back and digest these formulas slowly. When you've figured it out, come find me. However, my laboratory has very strict rules. Lin Nuo withdrew his hand, turned, and walked out of the library's main entrance. Gwen sat in the chair, looking at the business card in her hand and the perfect solution on the table, her chest heaving violently. This man named Lin Nuo was like an irresistible hurricane, violently tearing through her academic understanding and leaving an extremely overbearing mark in her heart. She couldn't wait to share this breakthrough discovery. Gwen took her phone out of her pocket and dialed the PIN number in her contact list. That was her current boyfriend, and also her partner who interned with her at Oscorp, Peter Parker. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. An extremely impatient voice came from the other end of the line, even accompanied by rapid breathing and the loud crash of heavy objects being smashed. Hello, Gwen, what is it? Gwen spoke excitedly. Peter, you absolutely won't believe what I just encountered. That decay equation of ours has been solved. It's a variant formula that completely subverts modern theory. As long as you apply this. Peter rudely interrupted her. Enough, shut up. On the other end of the line, only the harsh, piercing sound of a disconnected line remained. Gwen held her phone, stunned in the quiet corner of the library. She stared blankly at the call-ended screen, her heart tightening, almost forgetting to breathe. Peter had never yelled at her in such an extremely irritable and completely unreasonable tone before. She put down the phone and turned her head. Her gaze fell once again upon the draft paper filled with perfectly calculated equations. Resting quietly on the edge of the paper was a black and gold business card with a faint scent of woody cologne. Star Umbrella Group, Lin Nuo. The sensation of that tall, imposing man's large hand covering the back of her hand still lingered vividly on her skin. The man's palm was scorching hot, carrying an irresistible force. In less than a minute, with just a pen, he had forcefully broken through the deadlock that had plagued the entire team for 3 whole months. When faced with difficult problems, Peter would only get impatient, pull at his hair, smash lab equipment, and even roar at her over the phone. Yet that man named Lin Nuo, with one hand in his trouser pocket and his body leaning forward to corner her, had used only careless, casual pointers to utterly destroy that pile of supposedly extremely complex decay data. This strong contrast dealt a heavy blow to Gwen's pride, yet deep down, it also sparked a secret desire to explore further. Peter simply didn't understand just how epic-making this data really was. She bit her lower lip, carefully tidied up the draft paper on the table, and shoved it into her backpack. She had to show Peter this breakthrough in person. At the same time, in an old 2-story residence in Queens. The second-floor bedroom was in a complete mess. Peter lay on the wooden floor, breathing heavily. Large drops of sweat dripped from his chin onto the floor. The short-sleeved t-shirt he was wearing was completely soaked with sweat, and the muscles on his back, originally thin, were bulging abnormally. Just yesterday afternoon, during the internal tour of Oscorp, he had been bitten by a genetically modified spider that had escaped from its containment tube. When he woke up this morning, everything had changed. Peter pushed himself up from the floor. He habitually reached for the black-rimmed glasses on the nightstand. As soon as his hand touched the frame, he applied a little force. Snap! The resin glasses he had worn for many years were crushed into fragments by his 2 fingers. He felt no panic at all. He realized that he didn't need those broken glasses at all anymore. Every mosquito flying in the room, and even the dust in the cracks of the corner, he could see clearly. Peter reached out to grab the thick-bottomed metal thermos next to him. His 5 fingers had just closed around it. Click. The solid aluminum alloy cup body, as thick as his little finger, was crushed by his one hand into a completely flattened piece of scrap metal. Water splashed everywhere, spilling all over the floor. Peter tossed aside the scrap metal in his hand, his gaze falling on the solid wood wardrobe that was as tall as a person next to him. He clenched his fist, and without even bracing his waist or abdomen, he punched directly at the wardrobe door. Bang! His fist punched straight through the 3-centimeter thick solid wood board, leaving a large hole with rough edges. There was no pain, only a surge of violent power coursing through his body. Peter pulled out his fist, and wood shavings fell. He walked to the half-length mirror, took off his sweat-soaked shirt, and looked at his well-defined, explosive muscles. He leapt up, his legs erupting with powerful strength. His entire body actually stuck to the 2-meter-high ceiling. A clear sense of adhesion came from his palms and soles. He was like a large arthropod, hanging upside down from the ceiling, looking down at this dilapidated room. Peter let out an irrepressible laugh. He didn't need to follow behind Gwen anymore to do any boring genetic calculations. What did Gwen know? That woman who lectured him every day with her report cards and academic halo, did she understand what the truth of evolution was? Those complex formulas written on draft paper were nothing but a pile of ridiculous garbage in the face of absolute physical power. He himself was the most perfect mutant. Why bother going to the lab to study those few white mice? He had more important things to do now. He was going to let those who used to bully him and look down on him at school properly experience what he was capable of now. 3 p.m., the tree-lined path on the north side of the campus. Gwen stood under the old oak tree, clutching the newly printed and bound decay reversal report tightly in her hand. Peter, carrying a heavily worn backpack, had his hands in his pockets. He didn't even look at the road, walking straight past Gwen without any intention of stopping. Peter. Gwen stepped forward, blocking his path directly. Peter stopped, his face full of impatience. What is it now? I don't have time to listen to your nerd topics. Move out of the way, I have things to do. Gwen handed him the report, flipping directly to the core data page. Look at this. The decay reversal equation has been solved. As long as we add this node to the 3rd sequence, cross-species genetic fusion can succeed. The deadlock we had at Oscorp is resolved. Peter didn't even lift his eyelids, not even taking the papers. So what? So we can use this to apply for high-level access to the core laboratory. Haven't you always wanted to get the scholarship for that project? Peter let out a cold laugh. He reached out and slapped the report folder in Gwen's hand. Snap! The white papers flew out of her hand and scattered all over the ground. Enough, Gwen. Stop bothering me with these scrap papers. Peter's tone was extremely arrogant. Do you think that sitting in that crappy lab, staring at a few white mice, and writing a few rows of useless numbers can change the world? You're too naive. Gwen looked at her hard work scattered on the ground, her eyes immediately turning red. What on earth are you going crazy about? This is a goal we set together. You were fine yesterday. That's because yesterday I didn't understand what true power was. Peter looked down at her, his eyes filled with disdain. You will always only use your good student pride to pressure me. Do you think you're smart? Your pathetic little IQ is worthless in this real world. Gwen took half a step back, stung by these insulting words. You think knowledge is ridiculous. That is the solution to solve genetic breakdown. Genetic breakdown, Peter sneered, lifted his foot, and stepped directly onto the core page filled with formulas, grinding it hard. Truth only exists in power. Put away your savior theories. Don't waste my time with these boring things anymore. We are simply not on the same path. Peter walked past her, heading out of the school without looking back. Without the slightest hesitation, Gwen stood frozen in place, her mind in chaos. The sky turned gloomy, and after a few rolls of muffled thunder, a light, drizzling rain hit the tip of her nose. She crouched down, picking up the papers, one by one, that had been trampled and stained with muddy water. The rain soaked the pages, causing the ink on them to blur completely. Her hard work, which she was most proud of, was trampled upon like trash by the person she trusted most. A sense of grievance, confusion, and a huge feeling of disparity washed over her. Just at that moment, a pure black bulletproof Maybach broke through the rain curtain and stopped steadily by the roadside. The wheels rolled over the stagnant water without splashing a single drop of mud. The car door opened. A large black umbrella opened, blocking all the cold rain that was pelting down on Gwen. Cold rain beat against the jet black surface of the umbrella, making a dull, thudding sound. Gwen crouched in the muddy water, her hands tightly clutching the few pages of the core report that had been trampled beyond recognition. She looked at the pair of spotless, handmade leather shoes in front of her, her gaze traveling up the crisp dress trousers until it met Lin Nuo's face, which radiated an intense sense of oppression. Lin Nuo held a massive umbrella with a black gold frame in one hand, his tall, upright figure shielding her from all the wind and rain. His other hand was casually tucked into his trouser pocket as he looked down at the disheveled girl from a position of superiority. Does crouching in a mud puddle and crying help you piece together your shattered pride? Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse, his words dripping with aggressive mockery. Gwen's eyes were red. She recognized this man who had delivered a dimensional reduction strike to her in the library. Her competitive self-esteem made her instinctively want to retort. He was just in a bad mood today. Lin Nuo let out a soft scoff. Just because he's in a bad mood, he can trample all over you. He bent down, his broad shoulders bringing an absolute sense of oppression. He extended a long finger and pinched the data page, which was covered in mud and shoe prints, with obvious disgust. A mutation matrix that perfectly reversed the decay cycle, actually treated as a stepping stone and trampled underfoot. Little student, not only is your taste in men terrible, but your judgment of people is also lacking. Gwen bit her lower lip, unable to suppress the sour, aggrieved feeling. In front of the person who understood this formula best, Peter's arrogance just now seemed extremely laughable. Get up. Lin Nuo's tone was calm, yet carried an irresistible, absolute sense of control. He didn't take the umbrella. Instead, he reached out with a scorching hot hand and grabbed Gwen's slender wrist. With a slight tug, he pulled her entirely out of the icy mud. The man's palm was incredibly hot. That heat penetrated her soaked clothes and transferred directly onto Gwen's skin. Gwen's breathing became erratic. She tried to break free from this overly forceful touch. Don't touch me. I need to go back to the school laboratory. Go back to school and keep crying. Or go beg that piece of trash who can't even understand the formula to spare you another glance. Lin Nuo didn't give her any chance to refuse. He opened the back door of the Maybach and forced her inside. Get in. The car door closed, completely cutting off the cold rain outside. The heater in the car was running high, and the cabin was filled with the aggressive, woody scent of the man's cologne. Lin Nuo sat in the car, crossing his long legs. He pulled out a clean cashmere towel and tossed it directly onto Gwen's wet blonde hair. His large hand, with the towel in between, rubbed her head a couple of times without ceremony. Dry yourself off. If you dirty my leather seats, you'll have to work to pay off the debt. Gwen held the towel, tears still welling in her eyes. She looked at the man beside her, who seemed so composed and in control, feeling completely bewildered. Why are you bothering with me? We don't even really know each other. Because I really can't stand seeing a piece of top-tier porcelain being thrown on the ground and smashed by some brute who doesn't know how to appreciate it. Lin Nuo picked up a red wine glass from the onboard bar, swirling it gently. The self-esteem of those boys on campus is thinner than this glass. Lin Nuo turned his head, his gaze locked directly onto Gwen. They are deeply insecure to the core. Once they gain some kind of advantage that surpasses ordinary people, the first thing they do is never to share it with you, but to trample you underfoot. Because only by belittling your excellence can they hide their own past inadequacies. Gwen froze on the leather seat. These words ruthlessly tore open Peter's psychological defenses. All of Peter's strange behavior, irritability, and those arrogant words today, under Lin Nuo's deconstruction, turned into nothing more than a form of extremely childish, impotent rage. He can't even calculate the most basic interspecies genetic rejection. With that kind of brain capacity, he'll only ever be stuck in Queens for the rest of his life. Lin Nuo took a sip of red wine. And you were actually crouching on the side of the road crying for someone like that. Don't you think that's ridiculous? Gwen's cheeks flushed red, and she couldn't utter a single word in rebuttal. The partition in front rose, and the driver smoothly steered the vehicle out of Queens. Lin Nuo loosened his white shirt tie, revealing his Adam's apple. Mature men value your core worth. Your brain is worth 10,000 times more than his precious little mutant power. I spent a huge sum of money to buy your laboratory to provide a stage for true geniuses, not to watch you play these boring breakup games. Half an hour later, the Maybach stopped in front of a Michelin 3-star restaurant in the heart of Manhattan that enforced an extremely strict membership policy. Lin Nuo brought Gwen inside. Wearing clothes that were mostly wet, Gwen initially felt extremely embarrassed. But when the restaurant manager saw Lin Nuo, he immediately cleared out the entire top floor view area and even had a brand new high-fashion dress set brought over. Go change. Don't sit across from me looking so disheveled. Lin Nuo pushed the box containing the clothes toward her. 10 minutes later, Gwen came out wearing the new clothes. The pure white tailoring fit her slender waist perfectly, and the slightly open neckline exuded a sense of naive, youthful innocence. The two sat opposite each other. The huge top floor had only the two of them. The waiter served top-grade Wagyu beef and expensive white truffles. Lin Nuo picked up his knife and fork in a leisurely manner, his movements extremely elegant. He didn't let Gwen do it herself. Instead, he pushed the entire piece of steak he had already cut on his own plate directly in front of Gwen. Eat. Looking at the evenly cut pieces of meat on the plate, Gwen's heartbeat completely lost control. Peter would only take her to eat hot dogs on the side of the road, always fussing over change and insisting on paying separately. But this man in front of her, every gesture and movement, was full of absolute control over money, power, and details. This was an absolute crushing in an entirely different dimension. Is this, are you giving me charity? Gwen held her fork, her voice very soft. This is an investment. Lin Nuo cut another piece of steak, his tone nonchalant. I saw a promising talent with top-tier genetic calculation abilities, currently in a period of self-doubt after being abandoned by a giant baby. Naturally, I have to take advantage of the situation. He said the words, take advantage of the situation, so frankly that Gwen was completely at a loss for how to respond. Campus romances will only drain your talent. Lin Nuo put down his knife and fork, leaned forward, and crossed his hands on the table. His oppressive gaze fell on Gwen's face. You talk to him about data, and he talks to you about strength. That's a complete waste of your breath. But he really did become completely different today. He crushed a solid steel cup with one hand. Gwen tried to regain some of her past understanding. Crushed a steel cup. Lin Nuo let out a very low, muffled laugh, his chest vibrating. No matter what mutant ability he obtained, in my eyes, he doesn't even count as an ant. Strong limbs, simple mind. The ultimate fate of such a person is to be treated as a lab rat and locked in a cage. Gwen's fingers tightened. Lin Nuo grabbed a napkin and reached across more than half the table. His rough fingertips pinched Gwen's petite chin. Gwen gasped and leaned back against the chair. You. The man's fingertips brushed directly across the corner of her mouth, wiping away a bit of black pepper sauce. You even get food on your face when you eat. Little student, your self-care skills still need improvement. The heat from his palm was intense, and that inadvertent touch made Gwen's cheeks burn. This maturity and composure of a grown man formed an extreme contrast with Peter's rash, boyish nature. What exactly are you researching regarding interspecies fusion? Lin Nuo withdrew his hand and sat back in his seat. Gwen calmed her breathing slightly. When it came to her professional field, she immediately regained the focus of a top student. We are trying to perfectly implant the super tough genes of a mutant spider into human repair cells. But the rejection reaction was too strong, until you gave me that reversal formula in the library today. Lin Nuo tapped his fingers on the table. The direction is correct, but the resources Oscorp gives you are too backward. Those old centrifuges are simply unworthy of your computing power. Dinner ended, and night fell. Lin Nuo led Gwen to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the bustling night view of Manhattan. Do you see that? Lin Nuo stood by her side, his tall figure almost completely shrouding her in his shadow. In this city, if you want to realize your ambitions, just picking up a few pieces of waste paper at school is of no use. You need the top-tier supercomputer clusters, the most massive financial support, and... Lin Nuo turned his head, his high-bridged nose closing the distance. A man who can truly see the value hidden within you. Gwen's whole body tightened, her ears turning bright red. She didn't dare to turn her head at all. The Star Umbrella Group Core Biological Laboratory has an extremely rigorous internal assessment interview tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Lin Nuo took a magnetic card with gold-edged dark patterns out of his suit pocket and shoved it directly into Gwen's palm. Only those who pass the assessment are qualified to come into contact with the mutant genetic codes in my hands that are capable of overturning the world. The man's large palm completely enveloped her small hand, squeezing it slightly. Gwen's heartbeat was extremely fast, even her breathing became scorching hot. Do you want to come and try, little student? The morning light of Manhattan hit the bulletproof glass curtain wall of the Star Umbrella Group headquarters. Gwen Stacy clutched the magnetic card with gold-rimmed dark patterns, standing before the smart turnstile in the first-floor lobby. Today, she had specifically chosen to wear an extremely form-fitting white shirt and a black pencil skirt, her long golden hair tied into a high ponytail. The experimental report that Peter had stepped on, leaving muddy prints, had been reprinted and bound by her, and was now kept safely in her briefcase. Beep. Authorization confirmed. Core biological laboratory level. The synthesized electronic voice sounded, and the turnstile slid open to both sides. Gwen walked into the private elevator. As the floor numbers jumped crazily, her heartbeat also accelerated. The formula that man had written in the library yesterday, along with the incredibly oppressive Michelin dinner that evening, had completely overturned the worldview she had held for 18 years. The elevator door opened on the top floor. What came into view was a holographic corridor with a strong sense of science fiction. Researchers in white lab coats shuttled back and forth. There was no pungent smell of chemical reagents in the air, only the low hum of the highest-grade fresh air system running. So you're the high school student the boss personally requested. A charming, piercing female voice came from nearby. Betty Ross was wearing a wine-red silk dress, draped with a pure white lab coat over it. Holding an encrypted tablet, she walked up to Gwen in her high heels, her gaze brazenly scanning the naive girl up and down. Gwen stood straight, meeting Betty's scrutinizing gaze. Hello, I am Gwen Stacy. I am here for the interview. Betty let out a soft scoff and tossed the tablet in her hand directly into Gwen's arms. Star Umbrella's core laboratory doesn't keep idlers. Even if you were shoved in by the boss, if you can't pass my technical assessment, you can roll back to wherever you came from. Betty pointed to the giant holographic whiteboard in front. On the screen is the data for the third stage rejection reaction of the primary regenerative factor. 2,000 variable nodes. I'll give you half an hour to stitch the collapsed gene chain back together. The surrounding researchers, all highly paid Dr. S, stopped their work and stared at Gwen as if watching a show. Even they had been stuck on that equation for 3 days, expecting a girl who hadn't even started college to solve it was simply a fantasy. Gwen didn't waste a single word. She took the tablet and walked to the holographic whiteboard, her fingers sliding rapidly across the screen. The variant formulas Lin Nuo had left on the draft paper last night had already been calculated countless times in her mind. It didn't take half an hour. It only took 5 minutes. Gwen's finger tapped heavily on the last node. On the holographic screen, the collapsed gene chain that had been flashing with a blinding red light miraculously connected steadily. The green, past, text lit up, illuminating the entire laboratory. The whole place fell into dead silence. Several Dr. S widened their eyes, unable to speak a word. Betty was somewhat surprised. She took back the tablet and glanced at the perfectly closed loop code, which could be called a work of art. Well done. An incredibly oppressive male voice broke the silence. Lin Nuo pushed open the laboratory's glass door. He was wearing a pure black high-end custom shirt today, with 2 buttons undone at the collar, and his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing his solid forearm muscles. As soon as he walked in, his powerful aura made the entire space feel cramped. Gwen turned her head, her breathing immediately losing its rhythm. Lin Nuo strode over to Gwen, looking down at her from a commanding height. It seems that meal yesterday wasn't a waste. Little student, your computing power is barely sufficient. Gwen lifted her face, her competitive spirit completely ignited by this sentence. It's not barely sufficient. That reversal cycle matrix you gave me, I optimized 2 floating points this morning. The transmission efficiency of this system has now increased by 3%. 3%. Lin Nuo let out a low, muffled laugh, the vibration of his chest traveling directly into Gwen's ears. He turned his head to look at Betty beside him. Assessment passed. From today on, she stays in the core group. Betty walked to Lin Nuo's side, deliberately brushing her shoulder against the man's arm, her tone tinged with obvious jealousy. Boss, you really care about this little girl. Her computing power is good, but this is a hands-on platform. What position are you going to give a high school student who hasn't even touched a microscope a few times? Lin Nuo tapped his fingers on the edge of the holographic experimental bench, his tone firm. She will be my personal academic assistant. Her desk will be placed directly in the outer room of my CEO office. As soon as these words were spoken, the gazes of the male researchers in the lab toward Gwen completely changed. Who didn't know that Star Umbrella's CEO Lin was a dictator who stuck to his word? Being his personal assistant carried more authority than an assistant director. Gwen gripped the edge of her briefcase tightly. I'm here to do experiments, not to be a secretary who serves tea and pours water. Lin Nuo turned around, his high-bridged nose narrowing the distance between them. The scent of the man's woody cologne surrounded Gwen. With your meager knowledge, you don't even have the qualifications to serve tea and pour water. Be my assistant, and all the highest-level genetic codes in my possession will be fully open to you. If you want to overturn the existing laws of biology, then stay in the office and process data for me. Lin Nuo's voice was hoarse, carrying an irresistible, absolute sense of control. Go report for duty. Don't make me say it a second time. 3 p.m. Top floor, CEO office. Gwen held a stack of heavy data analysis documents and pushed open the solid wood door. Outside the huge floor-to-ceiling windows was the bustling Manhattan skyline. Lin Nuo leaned back in his large leather chair, his long legs crossed, listening to a report on the holographic screen regarding the short selling of Stark Industries stocks. Gwen walked over and placed the documents flat on the large desk. Boss, the preliminary simulation results for the cross-species fusion experiment are out. Gwen deliberately maintained professionalism in her address, trying to resist the oppression this man radiated at every moment. Lin Nuo raised his hand to turn off the holographic screen, his gaze falling on Gwen's face. He didn't flip through the documents, but instead reached out with his large, bony hand and directly gripped Gwen's right hand, which was holding the folder. Ah! Gwen let out a soft exclamation, wanting to pull her hand back. The man's palm was burning hot, his rough fingertips pressing directly onto the back of her hand with a strength she couldn't resist at all. What are you running from? Lin Nuo applied a little force, pulling her to the edge of the desk. The two were separated by half the desk. Lin Nuo leaned forward, picking up an electronic pen with his other hand. He held Gwen's hand, guiding the tip of the pen to slide rapidly across the virtual tablet. Look closely at the fault tolerance here. Although the floating point you added increased speed, it will cause microscopic cracks in the cell wall after 2 hours. This is called pulling seedlings to help them grow. Lin Nuo's voice was extremely low, his warm breath falling on the back of Gwen's right hand as she held the pen, making her shiver involuntarily. Because of Peter, Gwen subconsciously knew she shouldn't have this kind of physical contact with other men. But this was purely academic guidance, she couldn't find any legitimate reason to refuse. I didn't consider the consumption rate of telomerase. Gwen blushed, her attention completely unable to focus on the screen, her mind filled with the high heat coming from the man's palm. Lin Nuo let go of her hand, and the electronic pen was tossed onto the desk. Academic research doesn't rely on luck. Lin Nuo leaned back in his chair, his tone filled with undisguised mockery. Has that kid from Queens looked for you all day today? Mentioning Peter, Gwen's face turned a few shades paler. She shook her head. Lin Nuo scoffed. He's busy adapting to his pathetic mutated powers. He thinks he's become a savior, but in my eyes, he can't even get past the access control of this building. Don't say that about him. Gwen bit her lower lip, her last bit of good student pride holding on for dear life. He was just acting on impulse. Impulse. Lin Nuo's large hand landed on the desk, his highly aggressive black eyes locking directly onto Gwen. When a man gains confidence, the first thing he does isn't to share it with you, but to step on you and say your knowledge is worthless. You actually still think he was just acting on impulse. Lin Nuo stood up, his tall and upright frame walking around the desk, directly to Gwen. Gwen stepped back half a step, her waist hitting the edge of the desk, there was nowhere left to retreat. Lin Nuo stretched out his long arms, bracing his hands on the edge of the desk on either side of her, completely trapping her in this extremely private space. Where you are standing right now is the top biotechnology center in the US. Every piece of your data can leverage tens of millions of dollars in capital flow on Wall Street. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his nose almost brushing against Gwen's cheek. Staying with that kind of barbarian who only has violence in his brain will only lower your IQ. He simply cannot understand your core value. Gwen gasped for air, her chest heaving violently. The man's words were piercing, every single sentence striking right at the wounds Peter had left her. She knew very well that when Peter stepped on her experimental report on the tree-lined path yesterday, an unbridgeable rift had already appeared in their relationship. Just as the distance between them was extremely close, and the ambiguous air was about to ignite. The phone in Gwen's pocket suddenly emitted a piercing vibration. This abrupt sound broke the suffocating atmosphere. Gwen shrank her shoulders like a startled cat, hurriedly taking her phone out of her pocket. A new message was displayed on the screen. Sender: Peter. See you at my place at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. And May prepared your favorite roast beef. I have something important to tell you. The next evening, 7:50 p.m. Queens, outside the Parker house. The night wind carried the chill of late autumn, rustling the leaves on both sides of the street. Gwen, wearing a thin khaki trench coat, stood on the old wooden steps and rang the doorbell. The door opened, and Aunt May stood in the doorway wearing an apron, holding a spatula in her hand. Seeing Gwen, the expression on Aunt May's face turned extremely awkward, even tinged with a bit of helplessness. Aunt May wiped her hands awkwardly. Gwen, you're here. Gwen barely managed a polite smile. Aunt May, Peter asked me to come over tonight. He said you prepared roast beef. Aunt May looked apologetic and stepped aside. Oh, God, I'm so sorry, dear. The roast beef is ready, but Peter, he hasn't come back yet. Gwen's smile froze on her face. He hasn't come back yet. Aunt May sighed and walked over to the landline in the living room. Yes, I've called him several times, but it always says he's out of the service area. This boy has been like this lately. He doesn't come home after school, runs around outside all day, and I have no idea what he's busy with. Would you like to come in and wait for a while? Gwen shook her head, an overwhelming sense of disappointment spreading deep within her. No need, Aunt May. I'll just wait for him at the door. Maybe he's on his way back. Aunt May apologized again and turned back to the kitchen. Gwen sat on the cold steps and took out her phone. 8 o'clock sharp. Peter didn't appear. She dialed Peter's number. A cold, emotionless electronic voice came from the receiver. The user you have dialed is temporarily unreachable. The cold wind blew into the collar of her trench coat, and Gwen shivered. She opened Twitter, wanting to distract herself. The top search term was trending wildly, followed by a glaring, explosive tag. Entry: Masked freak appears on the streets of Queens. Red and blue tights flip a robber's van with one hand. Gwen frowned and clicked on the blurry video. In the video, on a main road in Queens, a runaway van was about to hit a pedestrian. A guy wearing crude red and blue tights descended from the sky. He shot white spider silk from both hands, hanging from a street lamp like a spider. Relying on his terrifying physical strength, he forced the van to a halt. The surrounding crowd burst into deafening cheers. The masked man swung away on his spider silk amidst the cheers, quickly disappearing into the night. The video was posted 10 minutes ago. Location: only 3 blocks away from the Parker house. Gwen stared at the guy on the screen, who, despite the mask, had a very familiar physique and movements. Peter had just obtained those abnormal mutant powers yesterday, and today he was already causing such a scene on the street outside his home. It wasn't that he couldn't come back. He was 3 blocks away, addicted to playing the superhero, looked up to by the public. In the face of the vanity and satisfaction brought by power, the important dinner he had promised her, that so-called reconciliation and apology wasn't even as high a priority as a robber. Gwen felt her heart sink to the bottom, cold and biting. Her boyfriend, the Peter Parker who used to discuss genetic formulas with her, had completely died in that mutation. The current Peter only had showing off on his mind. Just then, 2 dazzling headlights tore through the dimness of the street. A pure black bulletproof Maybach pulled up steadily to the curb outside the Parker house without a whisper of engine noise. The door opened. A pair of spotless, high-end handmade leather shoes stepped onto the leaf-strewn road. Lin Nuo walked to the steps with long legs, one hand tucked into his suit pocket. He was wearing a pure black shirt of exquisite texture today, his figure tall and straight, like a demon god in the night. He stood less than 2 steps from Gwen, looking down at the girl huddled there. Lin Nuo's voice was gravelly, every word dripping with ruthless irony. Is this the appointment you insisted on keeping? causing you to cancel my laboratory summary meeting tonight. Gwen looked up, her eyes red. In front of the man who understood her value best, she felt like a pathetic joke. She gritted her teeth, her voice barely a whisper. He might have encountered an emergency. Lin Nuo let out a sneer. An emergency. He stepped up, closing the distance to Gwen. His tall frame completely blocked the street lamp's light, shrouding her in his shadow. Lin Nuo reached out unceremoniously and snatched the phone from Gwen's grip. The screen was still playing the video of the red and blue-clad freak swinging around. The so-called emergency is wearing a bunch of rags like a joker, enjoying the cheers of a group of idiots on the street. Lin Nuo tossed the phone back into Gwen's arms. He is intoxicated by the pleasure of his mutant power. In his worldview, he is a god now, and you are just a mortal who needs him to bestow roast beef. Gwen's lips trembled, and she couldn't say a word. Because what Lin Nuo said was the bloody truth. Lin Nuo looked at her red eyes without offering any comforting nonsense. He swiftly took off his pure black suit jacket, still warm from his body, and draped it over Gwen's thin shoulders. The man's jacket was oversized, and the aggressive, woody scent of his cologne instantly overwhelmed the cold wind, wrapping her in his scent. It was a clear declaration of territory. Before this woman had completely cut off her past, Lin Nuo wouldn't pull her into his arms and devour her like he did with Potts. High-level hunters are best at using this kind of possessive pressure to destroy their prey's last psychological defenses at this stage. Lin Nuo's tone was sharp, leaving no room for negotiation. Put it on. If you get sick, who will handle tomorrow's data deduction? Stand up. Don't embarrass me by sitting on these cheap steps. Gwen wrapped the coat, still warm from his body, tightly around her and stood up like a marionette. Lin Nuo turned and walked toward the Maybach. Get in the car. Gwen didn't look back at the closed door and followed with stiff steps. She sat in the back seat, and Lin Nuo followed. The door closed, shutting out the outside world. The car's heating was turned up high. Lin Nuo took a bottle of room-temperature mineral water from the car's refrigerator, unscrewed the cap, and shoved it into Gwen's hand. He leaned back against the leather seat, legs crossed, staring straight at her. Do you see reality clearly now? Your proud academic partner now only has a body of savage, brute strength. You and he are no longer people of the same world. Gwen clutched the water bottle with both hands and let out a low sob. I'll go to school tomorrow and make things clear with him. Lin Nuo's voice was deep. No need to wait until tomorrow. A man who tramples on your self-esteem and then turns around to play the street joker, waiting even one more second for him is an insult to your intelligence. Lin Nuo turned his head, his sharp nose bridge closing the distance. Remember, you are receiving a top-tier salary from Star Umbrella, and your time belongs to me. If I see you shedding tears for this kind of savage again, you can pack up and leave. I don't need an emotional assistant. Gwen's breathing hitched. The man's strength and dominance became a source of extreme security in this moment. She nodded hard. I know, boss. I won't pay him any more mind. That's a good girl. Lin Nuo didn't initiate any extra physical contact, just watched her with a possessive gaze. The Maybach drove steadily away from Queens, heading toward Manhattan. Just then, the holographic projection in the car automatically popped up. The screen flashed with a glaring red alarm, and the Star Umbrella Group's encrypted communication line was forcibly accessed. Betty Ross's charming and urgent voice sounded in the car. Boss, something happened. Lin Nuo raised an eyebrow. Speak. Betty spoke at lightning speed. Movement from Oscorp. There was an unknown riot in Dr. Connor's laboratory. The target cut off all internal monitoring and rushed directly onto the Brooklyn Bridge. Hearing the name, Dr. Connors, Gwen, who was sitting next to him, changed expression. Dr. Connors, that is my direct mentor at Oscorp. He has been researching cross-species limb regeneration experiments. Lin Nuo ignored Gwen's shock and tapped his fingers on his knees. Target form. The holographic screen switched to real-time footage taken by a police helicopter over the Brooklyn Bridge. On the rain-slicked bridge, a pile-up had blocked more than half of the lanes. A giant lizard monster over 3 meters tall, covered in hard green scales, was leaping wildly across the rooftops of cars. The monster let out a terrifying roar, and with a wave of its massive claws, it ripped the door off a sedan. Civilians on the bridge screamed and fled. The scene was chaotic. Gwen looked at the giant lizard rampaging on the screen and immediately recognized one of the yellow school buses forced to a stop in the middle of the bridge. That is my sister's school bus. She has extracurricular activities today. Gwen panicked completely. She turned to look at Lin Nuo, her hands instinctively grabbing the man's shirt cuff. Boss, my sister is on the bridge. Gwen bit her lower lip, with grievance, fear, and anxiety completely intertwined. Lin Nuo turned slightly to the side, his tall shadow completely enveloping her. He freed one hand, his long fingers pinching the soft flesh of the back of her slender neck, applying slight pressure to force her to lift her head. Warm breath fell onto Gwen's reddened earlobe. Lin Nuo's tone was full of mockery. When you encounter something like this, you should call that swing-loving superhero boyfriend of yours. See if he goes to deal with a petty thief 3 blocks away first, or if he comes to the bridge to save your family first. Gwen's chest heaved violently. The man's words hit the nail on the head, cruel yet true. The fingers Lin Nuo was pinching the back of her neck with slowly slid down, caressing her thin back. He can leave you on the side of the road today just to enjoy the cheers. Tomorrow, he could watch you fall into a desperate situation for the sake of so-called justice. In the standards of such a man-child, you have never been the only option. Stop it. Gwen closed her eyes, and tears fell directly. She didn't want to admit it, but the lighthouse in her heart named Peter Parker was collapsing bit by bit. A harsh screech of brakes rang out. The Maybach stopped outside the blockade of the Brooklyn Bridge. Ahead, flames were rising everywhere, police sirens were in chaos, and the crowd was screaming as they fled outwards. Gwen pushed the car door open forcefully. The night rain immediately poured in, soaking her hair. Lin Nuo leaned against the leather seat, making no move to stop her, not even changing his posture. Go ahead. Gwen was stunned, turning back to look at the man in the car. Lin Nuo stared at her with his black eyes. Let you see for yourself. In a life or death moment, whether that wild man of yours, who only cares about acting cool, can actually become your savior. Gwen gritted her teeth, turned, and rushed into the rain, stumbling as she ran toward the yellow school bus teetering on the edge of the bridge. The bridge had already turned into a purgatory. The lizard monster, which Dr. Connors had transformed into, was over 3 meters tall. With one sweep of its thick tail, 2 police cars were overturned at the waist, dragging long sparks across the road. Several police officers raised their guns and fired wildly. The bullets hit its hard green scales and bounced off, not even leaving a white mark. The monster let out a chilling roar, and its huge, sharp claws tore through a steel cable. Helen Stacy. Gwen ran against the flow of escaping people to the side of the deformed yellow school bus. Most of the bus body had already slid off the edge of the bridge, only saved from falling into the churning East River because it was wedged against a concrete pier. There was crying and screaming inside the carriage. Several teenagers were huddled in the back row, completely terrified. Gwen took off her high heels and stepped barefoot onto the floor covered in broken glass. She used all her strength to pull open the twisted safety door. Get out quickly. One by one, don't push. Gwen climbed into the tilted carriage. The rain outside was heavy, and the school bus swayed from side to side in the wind and rain. Every sway was accompanied by the harsh sound of the chassis metal snapping. Gwen found her sister stuck under the seat in the last row. Sister. The little girl's voice was hoarse from crying. Gwen forcefully pried open the deformed seat baffle and pulled her sister out. Go. Head out the door. Just as Gwen was preparing to push the last child out of the safety door, a deafening boom came from above. The lizard monster noticed the movement here, and with a leap, its massive body landed heavily on the roof of the school bus. The fragile tin roof caved in. The school bus could no longer bear this terrifying weight, and the chassis let out a mournful sound of complete structural failure. The wheels wedged against the concrete pier suddenly slipped. Most of the carriage tipped over off the side of the bridge. Gwen lost her balance, tumbling backwards and falling back into the deepest part of the carriage. Her sister had just crawled out of the door and was lying on the bridge deck, crying loudly. Gwen screamed, "Don't come over." She wanted to stand up, but the angle at which the school bus was suspended was too steep. The front of the bus was facing downwards, aimed directly at the churning river surface below. Cold wind mixed with rain poured in from the shattered windshield, making it impossible to open one's eyes. The lizard monster's sharp claws pierced through the tin of the roof, the sharp tips less than half a meter from Gwen's cheek. Its green vertical pupils stared at Gwen through the window, and from its wide-open mouth dripped sticky saliva, emitting a nauseating, fishy stench. Gwen gripped the seat handle tightly, the veins on the back of her hands bulging. The shadow of death quietly descended. She blurted out that name. Peter. There was no response, only the sound of the wind and rain filling the sky, and the monster's heavy breathing. When she needed that so-called superhero the most, the boy who was full of promises was not by her side at all. His perfunctory attitude on the phone yesterday, and the image of him enjoying the cheers of passers-by in another district tonight, were magnified infinitely in Gwen's mind at this moment. Every word Lin Nuo had said in the car was piercing. Relying on this kind of man, she wouldn't even have the chance to have her body collected. The school bus let out one last muffled sound of metal tearing, and the entire body completely detached from the edge of the bridge, falling rapidly downwards. Gwen's mind went blank. The extreme sense of weightlessness made her unable to even scream. Just at this critical moment, a soft sound of a spider web tearing through the air finally came from the night sky. A red and blue figure swung on a spider web, descending rapidly from the high tower of the bridge. Peter let out a heart-wrenching roar from far away. Gwen. But he was too late. The distance was too great, and the spider web he shot was blown off course by the gale, scraping past the tail of the school bus and shooting into midair. Peter's eyes were bloodshot, and he could only watch helplessly as the school bus carrying Gwen, along with the lizard monster, plummeted toward the dark river surface. The school bus was falling. Gwen closed her eyes, accepting her fate. All the grievances and despair reached their peak at this moment. She had completely given up on that red and blue figure. The wind whistled. The falling school bus suddenly stopped in midair. A completely unreasonable and terrifying force forcibly stopped this ton's heavy steel monster. Gwen opened her eyes abruptly. A tall figure wearing a pure black shirt was holding the broken crossbeam of the school bus chassis upside down with one hand. The yellow school bus, weighing several tons, was frozen in midair. Gwen widened her eyes. Through the shattered windshield, she saw the person holding the bottom of the bus. Lin Nuo wore nothing but a thin black shirt. Rainwater slid down his sharp jawline, splashing into his slightly open collar. With one hand, he gripped the broken main load-bearing beam of the school bus chassis. He exerted force with his fingers, and the steel beam was crushed, leaving 5 deep indentations. This terrifying, Hulk-level strength completely defied the laws of physics. The inertia of the fall, combined with the weight of the entire bus, failed to make this man's arm bend even slightly. Gwen's throat tightened. "Boss!" A violent roar came from above. Seeing the prey suspended in midair, the lizard monster leapt from the edge of the broken bridge with its massive body, bringing with it a foul wind, and opened its blood-stained maw to bite at the top of the bus. Lin Nuo looked up, his black hair, soaked by the rain, plastered against his forehead. "You're courting death." He clenched his free left hand into a fist. It was a raw, physical blow without any flair. Instead of dodging, he braced the weight of the multi-ton school bus and, meeting the monster's downward lunge, swung a fierce uppercut from below. His knuckles slammed right into the monster's chin. The piercing sound of cracking bone drowned out the thunder. The mutant giant lizard, over 3 meters tall, couldn't even emit a wail before its hundreds of kilograms of flesh were sent flying by this heaven-defying brute force, tumbling a dozen times in the air before crashing heavily into a semi-truck container dozens of meters away. After dealing with the trouble, Lin Nuo suddenly exerted force with his right arm. He lifted and tossed. The damaged school bus traced an extremely violent parabola through the air, clearing the broken bridge deck steadily and landing back on the lane in the safe zone. The tires emitted a sharp screech as they hit the ground. Gwen tumbled inside the bus. Before she could even get up, an extremely powerful hand reached through the shattered window and grabbed her wrist. The heat of his palm was terrifyingly hot. The man's deep voice sounded in her ear. "Come out." Gwen crawled out instinctively, following that force. As soon as her feet touched the waterlogged asphalt, she hadn't even steadied herself when her legs went weak, and she was about to fall. Lin Nuo extended his long arm, grabbed her slender waist, and pulled her toward him with force. Gwen crashed into a solid, burning hot chest. The man's aggressive woody cologne scent, mixed with the dampness of the night rain, surrounded her completely. This scent made her tense nerves relax, and the fear and despair quietly receded. In midair, a red and blue figure was swinging rapidly toward them. Peter shot out webbing, pulling several pedestrians who had almost fallen off the bridge back to safety, his eyes frantically searching for that familiar yellow school bus. He saw it. The school bus was parked safely at the edge of the police cordon. However, The girl he had been desperately trying to protect was being held tightly in the arms of a tall man wearing a black shirt. Peter tumbled in midair and landed on the roof of a police car next to the school bus. His spandex suit was soaked through by the rain. Peter shouted, "Gwen!" He jumped straight off the car roof, wanting to rush over. Just then, the lizard monster that had been knocked away by Lin Nuo climbed out of the ruins. Shaking its shattered jaw, it fell into a state of total berserk rage. With a sweep of its giant tail, a car spun through the air, smashing toward the school bus. Peter reacted extremely quickly, shooting 2 strands of webbing to stick to the incoming car, attempting to use his own strength to stop it. But he severely underestimated the mutant lizard's monstrous strength combined with the car's inertia. His soles plowed 2 trails of white smoke into the wet bridge deck, and Peter was dragged forward by this force. Seeing that the car was about to smash into where Gwen was standing, Peter screamed out of control, "Look out!" Gwen heard the voice and looked back, her vision completely filled by the undercarriage of the rolling car. A warm, large palm grabbed the back of her head, forcefully pressing her face against his chest. Lin Nuo's voice remained steady. "Close your eyes. Don't look." Instead of retreating, he stepped forward. He lifted his right leg like a steel whip, kicking heavily into the oncoming car. His leg motion created a piercing sonic boom. His sole struck the side door of the car. The multi-ton car suffered a devastating impact and immediately changed its flight trajectory. Metal twisted, parts shattered. The car flew sideways like a cannonball, clearing the railing and falling into the turbulent East River, splashing up a towering column of water. The crisis was resolved. Lin Nuo slowly retracted his leg, his leather shoes making a soft sound as they stepped on the glass-strewn road. From beginning to end, he had only used one hand to hold Gwen, and even his breathing rhythm hadn't changed at all. He was as relaxed as if he had just kicked away a soda can. Peter fell into a puddle in a sorry state, his eyes behind the red mask full of shock. His mutant strength, which he was most proud of, had become a joke mercilessly crushed in front of this man in black. Peter scrambled up, his fingers clenching until they creaked. "Let her go." Lin Nuo didn't even look at him. His large hand remained pressed against the back of Gwen's neck, his rough fingertips intentionally or unintentionally stroking her flushed earlobe. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his breath brushing against Gwen's cheek. "Are you hurt?" Gwen was shaking all over. She gripped the lapels of the man's shirt tightly, her fingernails almost digging into the fabric. There was a clear sob in her voice. And no, she didn't even dare to raise her head, wanting only to hide in this safe sanctuary forever. Just as the two were speaking, the roar of helicopter propellers approached. Director George Stacy arrived at the scene, breaking through the rain with a squad of armed SWAT officers. He saw his 2 daughters next to the school bus at a glance, along with a suspicious figure in a red and blue suit. Director George drew his service weapon and shouted an order. "All units, lock onto that masked guy and that monster. Open fire." A dense net of gunfire intertwined. The lizard monster, knowing it was outmatched, roared, leapt off the bridge, climbed down the bridge pier into the sewer, and disappeared into the night. Facing the police's guns, Peter didn't know what to do. He wanted to go over and check on Gwen, but the police bullets struck the ground, grazing his toes. Peter hid behind an abandoned car, his voice full of anxiety and frustration. "Gwen, Gwen finally lifted her head from Lin Nuo's arms. She looked at the boy in the ridiculous spandex suit just a few steps away. This was her first love, whom she had known for over a decade. Just yesterday they were discussing biology papers, yet today he was several beats too slow to even save her sister. Rainwater streamed down Gwen's blonde hair. She spoke, her voice very soft, yet clear enough for Peter to hear perfectly. Peter's figure stiffened under the mask. He thought Gwen hadn't recognized him. Gwen stared at him, nothing left in her eyes but cold, calm disappointment. "Stop pretending. I know it's you. When you were enjoying the cheers 3 blocks away, did you ever think that Helen and I would be here waiting to die?" Peter panicked. He didn't even care about getting shot, leaning half his body out from behind the cover. "Gwen, listen to my explanation. That was because there was a robber. I couldn't just watch him get away. I intended to finish it as quickly as possible and come over." Lin Nuo let out a devastatingly mocking laugh from the side. "A robber." He stood tall and elegant, his trousers crisp, not a single drop of mud on him. He formed a stark, tragic contrast with Peter, who was lying in a puddle in such a pathetic state. Lin Nuo's tone was drawn out, even tinged with exaggerated regret. A robber's life is a life, but your girlfriend's life just has to wait in line. His slender fingers slid down the back of Gwen's head, pinching her slender shoulder and pulling her closer to his side. Little student, you have to be understanding of him. Lin Nuo looked down at Peter, who was hiding behind the car, every word stabbing fiercely at Peter's fragile self-esteem. After all, he just recently obtained that pathetic little bit of mutant power. When a child gets a new toy, they always have to go out on the street and show it off to everyone. As for the girlfriend at home still waiting for him to eat roast beef. Lin Nuo paused, his thin lips spitting out the most vicious 4 words. Insignificant. Peter completely broke down. Shut up, you fool. He shot a strand of webbing, wanting to stick to Lin Nuo. Lin Nuo didn't even move. He simply raised his hand, his index and middle fingers firmly pinching the white web that had been shot at him. The man exerted force between his fingers. The high tensile webbing, capable of stopping a car, was snapped like fragile noodles between Lin Nuo's 2 fingers. Lin Nuo casually discarded the broken thread in his hand, his black eyes full of disdain. Is this what you call saving the world? Attacking innocent citizens in front of the police director? George Stacy held his service weapon and strode through the curtain of rain. The SWAT team's tactical flashlight beams swept over the debris-strewn ground, finally settling on the wrecked yellow school bus. Gwen, Helen. George was horrified and immediately beckoned the medics to come forward. Why are you here? Helen burst into tears and threw herself into George's arms. Gwen was soaked to the bone, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. She didn't go to hug her father, but instead instinctively buried her face in the front of Lin Nuo's black shirt, which smelled of cologne. Lin Nuo had one arm around her shoulders, while his other hand patted her back casually. His posture was calm, like a guardian deity in complete control of the situation. After comforting his younger daughter, George turned to look at this stranger, who was dressed impeccably and remained spotless amidst the ruins. Years of experience as a veteran detective allowed him to immediately sense the highly oppressive aura surrounding Lin Nuo. Who are you? Let go of my daughter. George raised his gun, the muzzle slightly lowered. Lin Nuo did not let go, he didn't even change his posture. He looked down at the trembling Gwen in his arms. Director Stacy, is this how you treat a savior? Gwen hurriedly raised her head from Lin Nuo's arms and reached out to block him. Dad, don't shoot. Mr. Lin saved us. When the school bus fell, it was he who caught the chassis with his bare hands and drove that monster away. George gasped. His gaze swept over the completely twisted steel support beam nearby, then looked at Lin Nuo's fair, slender hands. He couldn't comprehend what kind of superhuman strength this was. Don't stop me. From the other side, a young, frantic male voice called out. Peter Parker, wearing that ridiculous, rain-soaked spandex suit, tried to break through the SWAT team's defensive line. Several assault rifles were immediately pointed at his chest. Back off. Hands on your head, the SWAT officer warned sternly. Peter didn't care about the police at all. His eyes behind the mask were staring fixedly at the hand Lin Nuo had wrapped around Gwen's waist. Let her go. What right do you have to hold her? Lin Nuo didn't just refuse to let go. Instead, right in front of Peter, his slender fingers ran through Gwen's wet blonde hair, pressing her even tighter against his chest. He didn't even spare a glance for the kid jumping up and down. Young man, you're misplacing your possessiveness. Lin Nuo's tone was leisurely, yet every word was barbed. What you should be concerned about is not who is holding her, but who almost got her killed just now. I was going to catch a robber. I couldn't be in 2 places at once. Peter roared loudly, feeling extremely aggrieved. Gwen, listen to my explanation. I was just a little late. I made it, didn't I? Gwen's face went pale. At a time like this, Peter was still making excuses for his lateness. Lin Nuo gently patted Gwen's shoulder and spoke in a tone that was extremely understanding, yet utterly shameless. Gwen, don't blame Peter. He's a big hero now. Lin Nuo leaned down slightly, his nose brushing against Gwen's earlobe, his voice just loud enough for Peter opposite them to hear. He just got superpowers, he must really want to prove himself to the whole world. Catching robbers is so cool. Compared to the trivial, thankless task of saving his own girlfriend, showing off on the streets is obviously more important. You need to be understanding of his ambition. I wasn't trying to show off. Peter was so anxious he jumped up and down, wanting to rush forward, but was shoved back hard by 2 gun barrels. You despicable villain, you're trying to sow discord. Sow discord. Lin Nuo let out a muffled laugh, his very breath carrying a hint of mockery. Isn't that the truth? Where were you when the school bus was hanging in midair, about to fall into the river? Where were you when your girlfriend and her sister were screaming in despair? Lin Nuo's tone was calm, without a shred of anger, but every sentence was like a precision-guided missile, shattering Peter's defenses. Oh, that's right, you were hanging on a street lamp at that time, enjoying the enthusiastic applause of passers-by 3 blocks away. After all, that kind of cheering sounds much better than a girlfriend's cries for help, right? Shut up. I was saving people. Peter clenched his fists, trembling all over. When someone gets their wallet stolen, that's saving people. When your girlfriend is about to be eaten by a monster, that's irrelevant. Lin Nuo rested his chin on the top of Gwen's head, coaxing her gently. There, he's just too busy. You can't expect a high schooler drunk on power to understand what responsibility and accountability mean. The fact that he could spare a moment to come see you, you should already be grateful. This high-level rhetoric rendered Peter worthless. Gwen's body went completely rigid. She pushed against Lin Nuo's chest, turned around, and faced the red and blue figure. Gwen, listen to me, I swear I will never leave you behind again. Seeing that Gwen was willing to acknowledge him, Peter immediately stepped forward like he was grabbing a lifeline. Peter Parker. Gwen called him by his full name. There was no hysteria, only a coldness that saw through everything. You just shot a web and almost pulled a car down on top of my head. Gwen's voice was flat, yet exceptionally clear. If Mr. Lin hadn't kicked that car away, I would be a corpse right now. Peter's breath hitched, and he immediately retorted. That was a mistake. That monster was too strong, I couldn't control it. You always have an excuse. Gwen gave a bitter smile. Yesterday at school, you thought those world-changing genetic formulas weren't as important as you crushing a cup. Today, you think fighting street thieves is more important than keeping a date. You don't want to be a hero at all, you just enjoy that sense of superiority. Gwen caught her breath, every word ringing with conviction. We're done, Peter, completely done. Don't call me again, and don't ever appear in front of me again. As soon as she said this, Peter was struck by lightning, standing frozen in place. What did you say? You're breaking up with me. Peter pointed at Lin Nuo, his voice cracking. Just because of this rich fool you've known for less than 2 days. What did he buy you? You're throwing away our relationship just because he has some filthy money. This incredibly childish comparison and interrogation completely infuriated Gwen. And it also infuriated Director George nearby. Shut your mouth, masked freak. George shoved the SWAT officer in front of him aside and aimed his gun at Peter's head. If you dare speak disrespectfully to my daughter again, I'll make sure you rot in jail. Get out. The police perimeter began to close in. Several high-intensity flashlights shone directly onto Peter's face. Peter looked at Gwen, who was hiding beside Lin Nuo and refused to look at him again, and was completely overwhelmed by a massive sense of defeat and humiliation. The strength he was so proud of seemed like a joke in front of this wealthy, powerful man who possessed terrifying, monstrous strength. Not only had he lost his first love, but even his chance to save the day had been snatched away halfway. I will prove it to you, Gwen. I will prove that I was the one who was right. Peter let out a roar of impotent rage, flipped his wrist, and shot a web that stuck to the suspension cable at the top of the bridge. With a hard tug, before the SWAT team could fire, he swung into the boundless night rain, fleeing in defeat. Watching Peter disappear into the darkness, Gwen could no longer hold on. As that tension relaxed, her legs went weak, and she fell backward. Lin Nuo reached out with a long arm, grabbing her slender, waist-hugging waist with extreme precision, and lifted her entire upper body up. Director Stacy, I've helped you save her. Lin Nuo turned his head to look at George, who was standing at the ready. Now, I'm going to take my personal assistant to change into clean clothes. Do you have any objections? George looked at his soaked daughter, then at his younger daughter who was scared silly nearby, and finally put away his service weapon. Thank you for your rescue, Mr. Lin. Please take good care of her. Lin Nuo didn't waste any more words. He exerted force with his arm, and in an extremely overbearing manner, half embraced and half carried Gwen as he led her toward the bulletproof Maybach parked outside the police line. The car door opened. Lin Nuo stuffed Gwen into the back seat, then sat in himself. The partition rose, shutting out the wind, rain, and noise from outside. Gwen huddled in the leather seat, her black suit completely soaked through by the rain. She bit her lip tightly, struggling not to shed any more tears. Lin Nuo pulled out a clean towel and threw it directly over Gwen's head. His rough fingertips, through the towel, rubbed her wet blonde hair aggressively. Are you sad over a useless brat who hasn't even grown up yet? Did your brain get waterlogged by the rain? Lin Nuo's voice was extremely low, carrying an irresistible sense of control. Gwen didn't refute him, she let the man handle her as he pleased. After a long while, a faint, thread-like voice came from under the towel. Boss, thank you. Just thanking me with words. Lin Nuo's large hand stopped, his fingers sliding down along the edge of the towel to pinch the soft flesh on the back of Gwen's neck. The man's palm was burning hot, and that heat transferred through her cold, wet skin directly into her blood. Gwen trembled all over, instinctively wanting to pull back, but was firmly pinned in place by that hand. Her heart was racing, her cheeks flushed all the way to her ears. I will focus on staying in the laboratory from now on. Gwen lowered her head and promised in a low voice. That's far from enough. Lin Nuo rubbed her flushed earlobe with his thumb. I want you, from today on, to not listen to anyone's orders except mine. Gwen raised her head, meeting that highly aggressive gaze. As if possessed, she nodded gently. Very good. Lin Nuo withdrew his hand and leaned back against the leather seat. Just then, a mechanical synthesized voice that only Lin Nuo could hear exploded deep in his mind. Ding! Detected that the original child of destiny, Peter Parker, has had a total collapse of his psychological defenses. Target female, Gwen Stacy, has officially completed her declaration of a break, and favorability has shifted on a large scale. Congratulations to the host for achieving the special achievement, intercepting to the end, green tea to the core. The back seat of the Maybach was extremely quiet. Lin Nuo leaned back against the leather seat, his long legs crossed. Just a moment ago, the system had given him a new reward. Congratulations to the host. Obtained the original male lead's core luck reward. Super Spider Sense passive prediction of all danger primary bio field. The cells in Lin Nuo's body were rapidly reorganizing, and even the slightest movements in the entire world were infinitely magnified. The trajectory of raindrops hitting the car window, the slight vibration of police car engines in the distance, and even the sound of Gwen's chaotic breathing due to lingering fear, were all clearly visible within his sensory network. Gwen curled up on the other end of the spacious leather seat. She gripped the pure black suit jacket Lin Nuo had draped over her shoulders tightly, her eyes red. Having just completely broken up with her first love of over 10 years at a life-or-death moment, this impact was enough to make any girl who had just reached adulthood collapse. Lin Nuo turned his head, his gaze falling straightforwardly on her. What, do you regret being so harsh with your words just now? Gwen brushed aside the wet hair sticking to her cheek, her voice as thin as a thread. No, I just feel that the Peter from before has truly disappeared completely. He almost got Helen Stacy killed today. He didn't change, his true nature was just exposed. Lin Nuo stretched out his long arm, his large palm reaching directly over to clasp Gwen's slender, soft waist. With a slight tug, he dragged her entire body forcibly to his side. The man's strength was too great, Gwen couldn't resist at all. She let out a cry of surprise and crashed directly into Lin Nuo's hard, broad chest. That aggressive, woody cologne scent instantly enveloped her. Boss. Gwen pressed her hands against the man's shirt front, her cheeks burning hot. She wanted to pull away, but that large hand was firmly clamped behind her waist. If he could leave you in the rain for the sake of a robber today, he could push you into the line of fire for the sake of so-called justice tomorrow. Lin Nuo lowered his head, his scorching breath spraying directly onto Gwen's cheek. For a street joker who can't even protect his own woman, every tear you shed for him is just devaluing yourself. Gwen bit her lower lip, a sour feeling of grievance welling up. I will never care about him again. Good girl. Lin Nuo's rough fingertips slid slowly up her waistline, finally pinching the soft flesh of her fair nape. The high temperature of his palm was transmitted through her cold, damp skin. Gwen's body went limp, and her breathing became completely chaotic. She had never been held by a man in such a domineering and possessive posture. Peter would stutter even when holding her hand, but this man before her was radiating extremely dangerous predatory signals with every gesture. You have nowhere to go now. From today on, your life is under my control. Lin Nuo's tone was firm. Outside the carriage, the rain was pouring down. The Maybach drove into a top-tier private flat garage in the center of Manhattan with extremely strict security. The elevator doors opened on the top floor. Lin Nuo pulled Gwen by the wrist and strode into this astonishingly large panoramic apartment. The indoor temperature was constant, and outside the huge floor-to-ceiling windows was the bustling night view of half of New York City. Go take a shower and wash away all the mud on your body, as well as the bad luck that Wild Boy brought you. Lin Nuo pointed toward the master bedroom and ordered in an irresistible tone. Gwen stood in the foyer, nervously twisting the hem of her clothes. Boss, I don't have a change of clothes. Lin Nuo scoffed softly. He unbuttoned the other 2 buttons at his collar with one hand, revealing his long neck and a small section of his solid collarbone. There are my shirts in the walk-in closet. What, do you need me to go in and help you take them off? No need, I'll go myself. Gwen, like a startled cat, quickly ran into the master bedroom. Listening to the sound of water coming from the bathroom, Lin Nuo walked to the bar and poured himself half a glass of whiskey. He raised his right hand and clenched his 5 fingers in the air. The heavy crystal ashtray on the table floated up silently. Without any external force, it completely defied the laws of physics. Lin Nuo turned his wrist, and the ashtray spun around in midair before landing steadily back in its original place. This was the power of the biofield, manipulating the kinetic energy of objects within 10 meters at will. 20 minutes later, the door of the master bedroom was carefully pushed open. Gwen stepped barefoot on the carpet. She was wearing only one of Lin Nuo's large white shirts. The man's size worn on her slender body barely covered the top of her thighs. Her long, straight legs were exposed to the air, the neckline was slightly open, and water droplets that hadn't been wiped away could still be seen on her collarbone. It was a fatal sense of fragility that existed between innocence and extreme temptation. Lin Nuo sat on the black leather sofa, his legs spread, one hand swirling the whiskey glass in his hand. Come here. Gwen bit her lip and moved over with small steps. She had just reached the edge of the sofa, not yet having spoken. Lin Nuo reached out his long arm, clasped her wrist, and pulled hard. With a dizzying spin, Gwen fell directly onto Lin Nuo's solid, scorching legs. The distance between the two was instantly cleared. The man's arms wrapped around her waist like iron hoops, completely trapping her in this private, cramped space. Boss, don't do this. Gwen's heartbeat was so fast it was almost going to break through her chest. She didn't know where to put her hands, so she could only rest them loosely on Lin Nuo's shoulders. Do what? Lin Nuo's free hand pinched her sharp chin, forcing her to look up, his black eyes filled with undisguised desire and control. Today, I not only saved your life, but also saved your sister from the claws of that monster. My principle in doing business is very simple, there must be a return for what is given. Lin Nuo pressed his thumb against Gwen's delicate lips, grinding heavily twice. Baby, reciprocity, what do you intend to use to repay me? This, baby, was called out extremely naturally, exuding full bewitchment. The roots of Gwen's ears were red enough to drip blood. She had never dealt with this kind of high-level emotional tug-of-war, and her brain was completely insufficient. I can work overtime in the laboratory to deduce data. Taking my salary to do your job, is that called repayment? Lin Nuo let out a muffled laugh that vibrated in his chest. He lowered his head, his thin lips pressing directly against Gwen's flushed earlobe. His warm breath hit her sensitive skin. Gwen couldn't stop trembling, and a very faint whimper spilled from her throat. Don't tremble, since you've already gotten into my car, just obediently accept my arrangements. Lin Nuo's teeth gently bit that rounded earlobe, leaving a row of extremely ambiguous light red tooth marks. Gwen gripped Lin Nuo's shirt fabric tightly, her whole body going limp, collapsing in his arms. Reason and emotion battled in her mind, but this absolute sense of security made her not want to push this man away at all. Lin Nuo's kiss slid down from behind her ear and stopped on the side of her neck. He didn't continue to explore further, just extremely restrainedly left a red mark declaring ownership there. Releasing Gwen's chin, Lin Nuo patted her waist. Go to the master bedroom to sleep. Tomorrow I'm going to the company to deal with the mess left by that near-bankrupt Tony Stark, and you stay at home to look at the encrypted files. Gwen gasped for air, jumped off Lin Nuo's lap as if escaping, and stumbled back to the master bedroom to close the door. Lin Nuo drank the whiskey in the glass dry, the calculation in his black eyes extremely precise. The next morning, Star Umbrella Group, President's office. Sunlight shone through the bulletproof glass onto the extremely large desk. Lin Nuo leaned back in the leather boss chair, flipping through the latest merger report sent by Potts. Stark Industries' stock price, under their massive acquisition, had completely fallen into the control of Star Umbrella. The sound of high heels stepping on the floor sounded. Betty Ross, wearing an extremely form-fitting professional outfit, walked in, swaying her waist. She threw a black folder directly onto the desk, then rested her hands on the edge of the desk, leaning forward, displaying the scenery inside her neckline extremely deliberately. "Boss, it's one thing that you left me in the middle of the night yesterday to play the superhero on the bridge." Betty's tone was filled with a thick sourness, one finger hooking Lin Nuo's tie, slowly pulling it toward herself. "Why didn't you even bring that little intern over today? Hiding a beauty in a golden house." Lin Nuo leaned forward following her force, his large palm directly wrapping around Betty's waist, pulling her closer. "Getting jealous at the company, has your courage grown? Aren't you afraid I'll punish you?" Betty's cheeks heated up, and she muttered softly. "You only know how to scare me with this." Lin Nuo patted her lower back and let go. "Talk business. How is the handover of the situation at Stark Industries going these past few days?" Speaking of work, Betty put away that charming demeanor and stood up straight. "Ms. Potts has already transferred the actual control of the 7 core energy factories under Stark's name to us. Tony Stark is now hiding in his seaside villa, refusing to go out, and won't even see the media." Betty opened the black folder. "Additionally, boss, for the emergency recruitment of the legal department director you asked me to post last week, we received an extremely special resume this morning." Lin Nuo raised his eyelids. "How is it special? The resume is so beautiful it doesn't seem real." Betty handed over a resume with a photo attached. "Double degree from Harvard Law School, fluent in 7 languages, and has served as chief legal officer at 3 multinational conglomerates. Every piece of data on this is perfect, you can't pick out a single flaw." Lin Nuo took the resume. The woman in the photo had fiery red wavy hair, exquisite and enchanting features, and a fatal aura of danger in the corners of her eyes and brows. Her name was written in the upper right corner of the resume. Natalie Rushman. Lin Nuo leaned back in his leather swivel chair and took a sip of coffee. "Go arrange the interview. I want to see her in private meeting room number 3 in 20 minutes. Lin Nuo did not answer directly, he simply issued the order. Betty didn't ask any questions and turned to walk out. Just as she was about to reach the door, the heavy double doors were pushed open from the outside. Pepper Potts walked in, carrying a stack of thick documents and reports. The 2 women with the highest authority within the group crossed paths at the doorway. Potts was wearing a high-end professional suit. The capable aura she had cultivated at Stark Industries was now even sharper, supported by the comprehensive resources of Star Umbrella Group. Betty glanced at her, nodded in greeting, and then brushed past her to leave the office. Potts walked up to the desk in her high heels and placed the stack of documents neatly beside Lin Nuo. "Mr. Lin, the actual control of the last 3 core new energy foundries under Stark Industries has been completely transferred." Potts opened the top page of the file, her tone calm and without any ripples. "In addition, the security personnel we arranged around the Malibu Beach villa have sent back the latest news. Tony Stark has been locked inside his underground room laboratory for 7 full days." Lin Nuo picked up a signature pen and signed his name sharply on the last page of the document. 7 days without seeing the light of day. What is he doing? Drinking, and dismantling that scrap metal day and night. Potts reported truthfully. When she mentioned the name she had served for 10 years, her attitude was exactly as if she were talking about an unrelated competitor. Ever since she had clearly seen that man's true nature on that stormy night, and been reborn under Lin Nuo's absolute strength and protection, all of Potts' rose-colored glasses regarding Tony had been shattered completely. Lin Nuo closed the file. Let him be. Send people to watch Malibu 24 hours a day. As long as he doesn't leave the underground room, there's no need to intervene. Let his pathetic self-esteem slowly ferment in alcohol. Understood. Potts put the files away. Lin Nuo stood up, his tall and upright frame walking around the desk. Potts did not step back. She stood where she was, looking up at the approaching man. Lin Nuo raised his hand, his large palm landing directly on Potts's lower back. Through the fabric of her high-end suit, the scorching temperature of his palm was clearly transmitted. He didn't make any boundary-crossing movements, he just pulled her toward himself quite naturally. Lin Nuo's tone was very low. You've worked hard these past few days dealing with the mess Stark left behind. A slight blush appeared on Potts's ears. In front of this man who controlled everything about her, the cold, hard shell of the career woman she possessed had faded away completely. This is what I should do. Without the resource foundation of Star Umbrella, I wouldn't have been able to handle such a large operation at all. Lin Nuo's rough fingertips rubbed against her waistline with extreme restraint before he let go. Cancel your work tonight. I've booked a table at the revolving restaurant on the top floor of Manhattan. I'm taking you to celebrate our milestone victory. Very well, boss. Potts' breathing was slightly disordered as she hugged the files and walked quickly out of the office. 20 minutes later. Star Umbrella Group, Private Meeting Room No. 3. The door lock made a slight click. Lin Nuo pushed the door open and entered. He didn't bring any assistance, holding only that thin resume in his hand. Natasha Romanoff was sitting upright on the leather sofa in the meeting room. Today, she was wearing a pure white silk shirt paired with black fitted trousers. A perfect disguise as a professional woman. Her red wavy hair rested softly on one shoulder. Seeing Lin Nuo enter, Natasha stood up immediately, displaying impeccable professional etiquette. Mr. Lin, hello. It is an honor to have this interview opportunity. Natasha's voice was gentle, her speaking pace controlled at the frequency most likely to inspire trust. Lin Nuo walked over to the single sofa opposite her and sat down. He crossed his long legs and casually tossed the resume onto the black gold coffee table. Sit. Natasha sat back down. An agent's instinct caused her to activate all-around micro-expression recognition and psychological profiling at this moment. The highest directive she had received from S.H.I.E.L.D. was to infiltrate this mysterious group, which had swallowed up most of Stark Industries in just half a month and possessed cross-era biotechnology. Nick Fury had assessed Lin Nuo's danger level as extremely high and required her to obtain the data from Star Umbrella's core laboratory. Lin Nuo called out the name on the resume. Natalie Rushman. Yes, Mr. Lin. Natasha maintained a perfect smile. Lin Nuo didn't look at the resume, his gaze fixed directly on Natasha's face. You wrote on your resume that you are proficient in 7 languages and have handled 2 merger antitrust cases involving tens of billions of dollars at a multinational conglomerate in Tokyo. Those are just past work experiences. I believe that at Star Umbrella, I can encounter more challenging cases. Natasha responded with ease. Every word she spoke and the rhythm of every breath was precisely calculated, ensuring she wouldn't expose any flaws. Lin Nuo let out a very low scoff. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. The physical distance between the two instantly closed. Ms. Rushman, do you know what the biggest failure in forging a perfect resume is? Natasha's smile did not change. Mr. Lin, I don't understand what you mean. All of my background can be verified through the Federal Background Check Network. Those network data can be altered by anyone as long as they have high enough authorization. Lin Nuo reached out, crossed the coffee table, and picked up a fountain pen that Natasha had placed in front of her. His fingers toyed with the metal cap of the pen, the metal clinking making a faint sound. The real failure lies in the fact that when people like you disguise yourselves as ordinary people, that sense of vigilance in your bones simply cannot be hidden. Lin Nuo raised his eyelids. From the moment you walked into this meeting room, the angle at which you sat in the chair was a 45-degree tilt. This is the combat sitting posture most convenient for launching a sudden attack. When you stood up to greet me just now, your gaze first swept over my Adam's apple and left chest. This is an occupational habit of evaluating the location for a fatal blow. Natasha's heartbeat stopped for a second. Her hands resting on her knees clenched slightly. The other party's observation skills completely exceeded the scope of an ordinary business tycoon. Natasha forced herself to steady her footing, trying to use the most reasonable explanation to gloss over the topic. Mr. Lin, you really know how to joke. I usually practice some self-defense techniques, so it might have become a habit. Self-defense techniques. Lin Nuo put down the pen in his hand. He stood up, his leather shoes making no sound on the carpet. He strode with his long legs, walked around the coffee table, and went directly to the side of the two-seater sofa where Natasha was sitting. His tall frame completely blocked the light from the chandelier above the meeting room, shrouding Natasha in his shadow. Lin Nuo did not make any aggressive movements. He just had one hand in his trouser pocket, while his other hand rested quite casually on the back of the sofa behind Natasha. If a Black Widow trained by the Red Room can only explain her actions with self-defense techniques, then this so-called super agent is left with nothing but this laughable level of skill.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.